Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this morning's Heritage Kingston meeting. Mr. Chair, we do have quorum. Would you like me to wait a minute to see if we get a couple more members? And you're just on mute, Mr. Chair. I can't hear you.
There we go. I think we're missing Paul Banfield, Jay McFarland, Don Mitchell, and Janine.
So I do see Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Banfield are with us.
They both arrived. Okay, thank you.
So I do believe we're waiting on Miss McFarland and Miss O'Reilly.
Yep. Well, we can probably start.
Okay. No problem. All right, Mr. Chair, just to get us started then, I will confirm that we do have quorum. Currently absent committee members are Miss McFarland, Miss O'Reilly, and Ms. Demeter. Joining us from staff are Jennifer Campbell, Director of Heritage Services, Andrea Gummo, Manager, Heritage Planning, Ryan Leary, Senior Planner, Philip Prell, Intermediate Planner, and Alex Rose Thompson, Planner. We also have Julia Jansman joining us as meeting host this morning, and I'm Elizabeth Fawcett. I am Committee Clerk for Heritage Kingston. We have a number of applicants and agents with us this morning, Mr. Chair, and we do have at least one member of the public at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's call the meeting to order then. Approval of the agenda. I have seen no changes except to ask you, Madam Clerk, the email that we received this morning, does that go on the agenda or not? From Frontenac Heritage Foundation.
Mr. Chair, that is up to the committee. If the committee would like to add that to the agenda at this time, that can happen, and it would be reflected in the minutes.
Yeah,
just to note that I have indicated to the author that this item would also be forwarded to council.
Council, yeah. So that should be then under 12D, correspondence, the email you received earlier this morning from the Frontenac Heritage Foundation. Other changes to the agenda? And seeing none, have I got all my faces there? Yep. Looking for a mover to approve the amended agenda. Councillor Doherty and a seconder. Looking for, I saw Councillor Oosterhoff move first. Any discussion? And seeing none, oh, sorry, Councillor Doherty. You're muted.
Oh, sorry, I was just ahead of
you. Were going to vote, weren't you?
Forward, just voting.
Now you can go. Okay. And the amended agenda then with the addition of the one letter. Those in favour of approval? Those opposed? So you have an agenda. I should at this point also welcome back Andrea Gummo. Andrea, welcome. We've missed you for the past several months, and always good to have you back. And as I have said to you and to Jennifer, please interrupt or let me know you want to interrupt from the city's point of view when we get into trouble. Confirmation of the minutes of February the 16th. There are two changes to make. Particularly on page 5, where in the fourth paragraph from the bottom, Mr. Taylor said 1, 2, 3, 4, and the fifth or the sixth line, he remarked that options such as stripping paint and regluing wood joints would be expensive but may not be necessary. And we'd ask you to accept that from him as a better comment on what he really said. And the other change would be on page 14, the second paragraph, the third line, the first word should be stating. He noted his concern with the massing, stating that the standards and guidelines. So with those two changes, are there other questions on the minutes? And if not, I will look for a mover for the minutes of February the 16th with those two emendations. Don Taylor, seconded Paul Banfield. Further discussion? Seeing none, those in favour of approving those minutes?
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you, Ted. And so you have a set of minutes. Pecuniary interest. Anybody at this time know of pecuniary interest? And I'll make my usual comment that if during the discussion you realize that you forgot or things change, please let us know immediately. Now, I'll move on to another book. I believe we have no presentations, delegations, briefings, or business A, B, or C. Is that correct, Madam Clerk and city people?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so we go down to 8D, 67 Colburn Street. And Alex, I believe that's you. Good morning, Alex.
Good morning, everyone. I'll just start by saying that if I make any blunders or seem a little incoherent, I had a very sick toddler up all night, so I haven't slept more than a few hours. So I'm going to try and keep it together here, but you never know what might happen when you have that sort of sleep deprivation.
Yeah,
so
good luck. Our sympathies are with you.
Yes, and he's around and downstairs watching TV, so hopefully he's doing okay now and he'll be okay. So starting with 67 Colburn Street. So this property is designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and this is an application under Section 33 for alteration to replace the fascia boards in kind and to repair the soffits and returns as necessary on both the east and west gables. Next slide, please. So the property is located on the north side of Colburn Street between Berry Street and Clergy Street East. Next slide, please. It contains a two-story frame house with a red brick facade that was constructed sometime before 1827. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, it is designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. This was back in 1987. And so the designation bylaw is quite brief. It states, in this pre-1827 frame house with a brick facade, the new Queen's College held its first session in March 1842. That fall, Queens moved to Princess Street and the Samuel Morley returned to live in this house. There's a draft list of exterior attributes listed below here, just to give everyone a sense of what might be included if we were to write a draft designation bylaw today. So two-story massing with a gable roof, it's frame construction with wood siding and a red brick facade, original window and door openings, period-appropriate wood windows, and certainly the wood eaves, which includes the soffit, the fascia, and the returns, as well as a brick chimney. Next slide, please. So the maintenance and care of this historic house is very evident in the condition and the design integrity of its existing heritage attributes. The eaves, which include the fascia, soffit, and return on the east and west gables, are wooden and appear to be early or original versions. The fascia boards are visibly deteriorating despite regular maintenance and repainting. So the owners wish to replace them in like-for-like design, material, and color in both the east and west gables, as you see here on the slide. Additionally, as that work is underway, repairs may be required to the soffits and returns once the frieze boards are removed. These repairs would be minor in nature and again be in a like-for-like design and material. This application complies with guidelines 14, 16, and 17 of section 4.5.2 of Parks Canada Standards and Guidelines, which look at wood and wood products. They address the appropriate repair of wood elements. So guideline 14 advises retaining all sound and repairable wood that contributes to the heritage value of the historic place. The soffits and returns on the gables will be repaired as needed by patching, piecing, and consolidating, or otherwise reinforcing the wood using recognized conservation methods. Lastly, the replacement of the fascia boards complies with the advice in Guideline 17, which recommends replacing in-kind extensively deteriorated or missing parts of wooden elements based on documentary and physical evidence. So in summary, this proposal involves the conservation of the wooden eaves through sensitive restoration. These eaves are an important heritage attribute of the property and contribute to the expression of the architectural style and age of the building. So with that, we'll move to the next slide, which is a recommendation to approve this alteration. And I'll leave it now to you for discussion. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you indeed. Committee members, so you are free to make comments, ask questions, wave at me first. Councillor Oosterhoff, I've lost your video, so I can't see if you're waving, but otherwise I see nobody. And so members of the public.
Mr. Chair, we do have one of the owner's applicants, Mr. John Black, on the call. I'm not sure if he wishes to speak to the application, but he is here if questions arise.
Okay, John Black, you're welcome to make yourself heard if you wish.
Well, good morning, all. I see some familiar faces on the panel, and good morning to you all.
Welcome again. Yeah.
I think Alex has done a superb job in summarizing what we want to do with, this is my wife's house, Amanda Black, and we just want to bring it back to original specs, so to speak.
Good. No, thank you, and well done for trying to do that as well. Looking then for a motion, a mover for the motion, which has the one recommendation and 2 conditions to it. Moved by Councillors Doherty and Paul Bamfield seconding it. Further discussion? And seeing none, then ask you to raise your hand or shout. Those in favour?
Aye.
And as Councillor, thanks for putting your hands up. Councillor Oosterhoff, are you still with us? So that will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in favour and none against for the record, and that carries. And thank you, John. That will go on to council, and best wishes with the work you're doing on that house.
Well, thank you all. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye. We now move on to part 5. I'm just going to make one comment here on the procedure on part 5s. You will remember that you get to ask questions, and then you get to make, and it clearly states, final comments. And we have realized that since when the motion is on the floor, it cannot be amended or changed in any way, that there is no point in discussing that motion as it is. So can you please make sure that you have asked your questions and made all your comments before the motion goes on the floor? It's not restricting you to anything. It's just changing the timing a little bit and preventing some duplication that's taken place. So 81 Gore Street, Ryan.
Morning, Mr. Chair.
Good morning.
Thank you. So the application that we're looking at today is at the property at 81 Gore Street. Can I get the next slide, please? This is located. This is located on the north side of Gore Street, mid-block between King Street East and Wellington Street. Next slide, please. The property includes a 2-story brick and rough cast stucco frame dwelling built in the 1840s. Next slide, please. The property is included in the Old Sydenham Heritage Conservation District, created pursuant to Part 5 of the Heritage Act of 2015. The property inventory evaluation rates the property as significant to the district. A detailed history of the property was prepared by Dr. McKendry. It's included as Appendix C of the Heritage Impact Statement. And based on her research, Dr. McKendry submits that the building, likely framed with painted clapboard siding and a central brick chimney, was likely built around 1846. The red brick veneer and with yellow accents, likely added in 1870. The property inventory evaluation has been included as Exhibit B. The full chronology and HIS are available on Dash. The Section 2 of the district plan provides a statement of cultural heritage value and interest for the entire district and includes a list of attributes which are those physical components of the district that express its cultural heritage value. These include varied ages, styles, and types of buildings, compact scale, comprised of street widths, building heights, approximately 2 to 3 stories, and setback. Additionally, Section 2.3 of the plan provides a description of the sub-areas and their heritage attributes. And this particular property is located in the North Tobagot sub-area. And in Section 2.3.2 includes a list of attributes for that sub-area. And they include closely packed buildings forming the street edge, vernacular building design, with prominent street trees forming canopies along the street. And of course, the subject property contributes to these attributes, making it a culturally important part of the district. Finally, the HCD property inventory includes a number of notable features on the property, such as the 2-story scale, the brick facade, the window openings, and the side gable roof. Next slide, please. So the application that's before the committee today is under section 42 of the Heritage Act. It's been submitted to request approval to remove an existing single-story rear addition and roof framing of the dwelling and to construct a 2.5-story rear and partial side addition, and to alter the profile and height of the existing roof to add additional partial third floor space. The rear addition will be approximately 5 meters by 7.5 meters in size and will include a secondary entrance and an approximately 1.3 meters side addition off the driveway. The original low pitch roof, which is approximately 212 pitch, will be increased in height by 2.2 meters, and that includes 0.5 meter of additional wall height, and reframed with a steeper pitch, approximately 1012, to accommodate the proposed partial third floor. Next slide, please. The rear addition will be approximately 0.5 meter lower than the peak of the reframed roof. It'll be clad in a wood clapboard siding. Next slide, please. An overall repointing of all the masonry is to be undertaken, including the removal of the later concrete chimney on the east side, and an update to all heating, venting, and air conditioning systems, including the reinstatement of the lost central brick chimney. Additional red brick coursing in yellow with yellow colored voussoirs will be added above the second floor windows. On the front elevation, the proposal includes the installation of all new windows, doors, and roofing. The new windows will be metal clad wood, sash style in a 6x6 pattern. New wooden shutters are proposed to frame the windows on front. The hood over the front door transom window is to be removed. The new front door is to be a panel door with or without partial glazing, designed to match the period of the building. The roofing is to be metal in a standing seam profile in gray tone. And all new rain gear, including metal gutters, downspouts, and wooden or composite wooden soffits, eaves, and fascia are proposed. And an overall update to the landscaping is proposed, including the retention of mature trees in both the front and rear yards. Supporting information is included in dash, and that includes 3 letters from the owners, elevation and floor plans, conceptual renderings prepared by Mark Peabody Builder, custom builder, and a heritage impact statement prepared by LHC. And select portions of those are included in Exhibit C to the staff's report, but those material in their entirety are included on dash. The 81 Gore Street is a contributing part of the streetscape of this portion of Gore Street. Its cultural heritage value is recognized as part of the old Sydenham Heritage District. It is important to note that the subject property is not designated individually under Part 4 as a heritage resource, but only for its contribution to the heritage value of the district. Thus, when reviewing changes to the subject property, one must consider the impact on the district in general, and not necessarily those that impact only the affected property itself. Section 4 of the old Sydenham plan establishes a framework related to building conservation. And as I noted, this is a complex proposal with many conservation initiatives. And our report speaks to these in detail. However, I'm not going to go into great detail on each of the conservation initiatives in my presentation, but I'll focus on some of the larger proposals here. And of course, we're available to take questions on that. Section 5 of the plan provides policies and guidelines related to building alterations and additions. The most extensive change to the property and to the district is the proposed alterations to the roof and the additions to the rear of the building. So with respect to the roof, as noted, the proposal is to remove the existing shallow slope roof, increase the wall height and steepness of the roof pitch to add 2.2 meters of height to the building. Section 531 provides direction regarding roof alterations on heritage buildings and notes that roof profiles visible from the street should remain unaltered. So the use of the term should in this statement is important when considering the impact of this change. Is this particular roof pitch important enough to the property and to the HCD that it must not be altered? Further, will the change to the roof pitch have an unacceptable negative impact on the overall character of the streetscape of the HCD or to the property's contribution to the district? While the subject property itself does not have any formal heritage attributes, being it's not designated in Part 4, the property inventory in the HCD and expanded on in LHC's Heritage Impact Statement, includes a description of the building that mentions its two-story scale, brick facade, window openings, and side gable roof. The pitch of the roof is not noted. This building's red and yellow brick facade and vernacular design, its gabled roof and rectangular openings, contributes to the historic compact scale comprising of street width, building heights, and setbacks, and the closely packed building forming the street edge, which are those noted attributes in the district. Following the completion of the proposed alteration, the brick facade, fenestration pattern, side gable roof, and two-story scale, when viewed from the road, will continue to be present, and thereby conserving its contribution to the streetscape. The restoration works proposed to the masonry, the windows, doors, the reinstatement of the lost chimney, and the visible eave returns, and the removal of the hood over the transom window will enhance the heritage character of the property and the district. The Old Sydenham district includes a wide variety of roof types. Some roof profiles are very high cultural importance, I'm sure you would agree, and not just to the character of those particular buildings, but also to the district. Most of those, I would argue, are prominent landmarks. And I would, as an example, say the Henry House has an interesting roof profile in the corner of West and King, as does the Belvedere or the Hochelaga or places like that. And in those particular cases, one would argue that the change to those roof profiles visible from the street must not be permitted. And as a general conservation principle, changing original roof profiles is usually not desirable and should only be considered as a last resort. The subject building, however, is not a prominent landmark. It's not designed by a renowned architect, nor is it a meeting place of some culturally significant event or a home of a prominent citizen. It's a simple working class vernacular building from the late 1840s, with a brick facade added in the 1870s. This type of building in a single, semi, or row house form is common in Old Sydenham. Common to this type is the side gable roof, and typically in a steeper pitch. This somewhat unusual low profile, or low pitch roof, coupled with the small size of the property, the owner's desire to retain the mature trees and amenity space on the property, limits their ability to adaptively use this ag space, and thus requiring the alteration. The subject building is not a flashy or eye-catching style. However, its historic profile, its design, brick cladding, makes it an important part of the district character. So, while each application is treated separately, the site-specific consideration characteristics, this proposed change to the roof pitch will not impact the character of the property, nor have a negative impact on the streetscape or overall character of the district. As noted in the HIS, this evolution of the building maintains the continuum of the heritage area and is inspired by other properties in the HCD. Next slide, please. Standard 11 of the Federal Standards and Guidelines for new construction, as you all know, notes that additions should be physically and visibly compatible with, subordinate to, and distinguishable from the historic place. This direction is echoed and expanded on through Section 5.2 of the district plan. The district plan provides that additions should be located away from the street, be no taller, preferably lower, than and to the rear of the historic dwelling. Side additions should be clearly set back from the face of the heritage structure in order to maintain the prominence of the original building. The general location and massing of the new addition complies with this policy. Once complete, this project will restore and preserve the heritage building, which will continue to sit proud on site near the road with the new addition at its rear. The reframed pitched roof on the existing building, while designed to reflect this traditional roof design, will have the added benefit of providing additional screening to the new rear addition, which will be approximately 0.5 meter lower than the peak of the reframed roof. Section 5.3 and 5.4 of the district plan provides more specific guidance on altering and adding additions to heritage buildings. The plan directs that cladding of new additions should be distinct from the cladding of the heritage building. It should use reveals, transitions, and offsets, and are encouraged to enable one to clearly identify the new addition against the original building form. Acceptable cladding on new additions include wood or composite wood siding with preference to horizontal designs and stucco. New roof materials should be, quote, compatible with the age of the architectural style of the building, and The concept plans indicate a standing seam profile metal roof in a dark gray tone. The roofing in this style and material is appropriate for this type. This application was circulated as per our usual process. A number of internal departments have commented on this circulation. These comments have been provided to the applicant, included as conditions of approval where appropriate. I note for the committee's benefit a couple of comments here that we received, one from our colleagues in forestry that remind the owner that the city-owned tree in the front yard is not to be impacted. The placement of building materials, equipment, or cleaning of equipment is not to be performed in the softscape area near the trunk. The applicants are also reminded that the mature tree covers on the neighboring yards and should be mindful of the use of heavy equipment in the rear yard. We also received comment from planning that they have a number of concerns from a zoning perspective that will need to be addressed, or a minor variance of provision application is required, and that the applicant should consult further with planning staff. This was also, of course, circulated to Heritage Kingston members, and the comments are consolidated in Exhibit D of our report. The 3 responding committee members noted substantial concerns. I note there are substantial with the proposed alterations to the roof profile and the size of the addition. And these comments have been provided to the proponents for consideration. Can I get the next slide, please? Mr. Chair, I wanted to bring the committee's attention to this recommended motion because it is extensive. The first slide, there are all 3 slides. The first slide is the description of the alteration itself and all 13 components of that in detail. The next slide, please. This is the half of the conditions that we're proposing. And I draw your attention to condition 3, which requires the owner to provide color details on the windows, doors, trim, cladding, roofing, etc. To Heritage staff for review prior to installation. Condition 4 is the one that we try to include as often as possible when we're talking about our removal. And this is that the owners provide photographic documentation of the interior of the roof and attic of the main house before it's removed. Next slide, please. And these are the last of the conditions. And I draw your attention to number 9, which is the recreation of the chimney, vissoirs and shutters and e-returns that they are to match the scale and profile of the original design. And I believe we have a picture from Dr. McKendry in the chronology that will help guide us in that regard. Next slide, please. So just to wrap up, Mr. Chair, in summary, it's important to remember that the subject property and its dwelling are not designated on their own for their individual heritage value or interest, but only for their contribution to the district character. While the scope of the application is substantial and will result in considerable changes to the property, when one considers what contribution this property provides to the district and how these changes will affect that contribution, the analysis concludes that these physical aspects, such as the historic profile and contribution to the streetscape, are being conserved and enhanced through various restoration efforts, the masonry repointing, the windows, doors, e-returns, chimneys, and not negatively impacted by the changes to the roof pitch or the rear addition, which are designed to be sympathetic and compatible with the district. Heritage staff are of the opinion that the proposal conforms to the intent, goals, and policies of the district plan and will uphold the heritage objectives set out in the official plan, the ministry's guiding principles, and the federal government standards and guidelines. This portion of Gore Street is an eclectic mix of building styles, sizes, and ages. The subject building, when completed, will not be the largest or the smallest on the block, nor will it look out of place. Its primary brick facade, secondary wood and stucco side, steel roof, and period-appropriate windows and doors will complement the evolving heritage character of Old Sydenham, which has made this district a cultural treasure in the city of Kingston. Staff recommend conditional approval of this application, Mr. Chair, and I believe the owner and some of their team are available on this meeting, and we thank you for your time.
Good, thank you very much, Ryan, for that introduction. Members of the committee, can you confirm your dash comments have been correctly recorded in the package? And I presume that means yes. I was just about to say wave if it's no, but I see nobody. I'm too excited, so I presume then that the dash comments are correct. We move on to members of the public wishing to make comments and ask questions. There's a 5-minute limit on these. And Elizabeth, can you explain what they should do?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, for members of the public joining us this morning. That includes the applicants as well as members of the public in the gallery. We do require you to use the raise hand function in Zoom in order for us to call on you. For those who are joining us as participants, this is located in the participants list. When you click on the tile along the bottom of your Zoom window, it will open a list to the right-hand side, and the raise hand function is at the bottom of that list. And for those joining us as members of the public, as attendees, the raise hand function is located in the center of your screen. So, Mr. Chair, I do see that Ms. LaRue does have her hand up, if you'd like to go to her first.
Okay, we'll go to you first then, Ms. LaRue. Good, welcome.
Thank you so much. I just want to start by thanking Ryan for his presentation and thoughtful and thorough attention to our file. David and I are both well aware that there are some committee members that are standing firmly rooted in opposition to our project. For the others today, we hope that you will consider the merits of our application and contribute meaningful input as we move forward. This project is timely. There are several things that need urgent and thorough attention to our house. I've outlined these in previous correspondence, but just to reiterate today that they do affect our day-to-day quality of life. They need to be done, but the different issues should be done in sequence and under the supervision of a heritage builder. It can't be overstated that we have an excellent team and a wealth of heritage building experience with Mark Peabody. We're here today having fully committed ourselves to the process of this committee. We submitted our pre-application originally almost a year ago, and at that time we hired a team of heritage consultants, undertook a heritage impact statement, and hosted a site visit. We also had drawn up several additional architectural designs based on layers of feedback. These activities have both been costly and time-consuming. However, here today, we feel our project is an excellent example not only of the intent of the HCD plan, but the benefits of early and extensive neighborhood consultation, working collaboratively with professional heritage planners, and seeking wide consultative input from tradespeople with heritage expertise. We have extensive support from our neighbors. I want to close by saying that we don't see our desire to continue living and investing in the sustainability of this house as being at odds with what this committee is trying to accomplish. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Peru. Other speakers, I see Ben Holtoff. Welcome, Ben.
Good morning, and through you, Mr. Chair. My name is Ben Holtoff. I'm a senior planner and cultural heritage specialist with LHC, and I was the lead author of the heritage impact statement for this property. And we also want to thank city staff for the several rounds of consultations and constructive comments that they provided while we worked through several iterations of this. LHC has carefully reviewed the proposed rehabilitation of 81 Gore Street, and in our professional opinion, this is a sensitive adaptation in the HCD. We also feel that while this does introduce some change, it's generally sympathetic and compatible with the intent of the HCD. And in our professional opinion, it's a good conservation project. So thank you.
Good, thank you very much. We have further members of the public. If you can raise your hand and be recognized.
Mr. Chair, I do see that Shirley Bailey is with us, and she would like to speak if she could.
Okay, Ms. Bailey.
Good morning, committee members. Thank you to Ryan for that detailed presentation. The letter that we sent to you this morning really speaks for itself. There are just a couple of elements that I would like to point out. In terms of the heritage impact statement, it's notable that there is an entire section of the official plan which refers to the Sydenham Heritage District Plan, and it's not referenced. And there's one policy in particular that requires that states actually additional development is limited. There's like 6 or 7 policies, but this one policy says additional development is limited to small scale alterations and compatible infill in accordance with the district plan to reflect the massing and landscaping context of the district. Now, to their credit, the applicant has done a tremendous amount of work in terms of the number of renovations and the amount of consultation. But I'd just like to say that, you know, if there had been discussions between LHC and staff, then surely the heritage impact statement should have made reference to this section and should have somehow drawn a conclusion there, which it seems not to have done. Likewise, the staff report does not refer to this section. The other thing that really is concerning to the foundation is this idea that if it does not have Part 4 designation, it can still be significant, but somehow second rate. And going forward, the foundation would just like to say that this is really problematic. It's not as though the district was analyzed initially before the plan came into place and said, okay, are all the properties that need Part 4 designations, have all of them been analyzed, and are there bylaws in place? No. The idea was that there was a definite need to put the district plan in effect. And so you will find there are quite a number of properties which do not have a Part 4 designation. So this feels, sorry to say, but like a faulty argument to say, oh, well, it doesn't have Part 4 designation, so we don't, it doesn't give its full due to me. So anyway, so those are the 2 elements. We do have a concern that this is precedent setting for the district. And we recognize that there have been, under this Part 5 form of analysis for the plan, there have been other major alterations done in the district. But we just express our caution going forward that this will set a precedent for other similar properties in the district. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Those are all my comments.
Good, thank you very much. I recognize Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. So I wasn't planning on speaking, but I'd just like to speak briefly about the thoughts there from the Kingston Frontenac Heritage Foundation. I must say I do have some concerns with the way that, that is brought up. It's, for lack of a better word, I think it's a bit disingenuous to send an email the day before. I mean, the very, purpose of the Frontenac Heritage Foundation on its website is to preserve historical buildings. And, I think I look back through and I can't find any other situations where the Frontenac Heritage Foundation has commented on applications. I think it'd be much more productive if the Frontenac Heritage Foundation feels that it is their role to screen these applications is to perhaps, have representation on the Heritage Committee. But I think it's unfair to, have the letter brought forth on such short notice for our team. I mean, the other comments have been on Dash for quite some time, and they allow time for proper consultation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have other members of the public wishing to speak? And Madam Clerk, I know Todd is there. I just want to comment to you, on my list, I do not see people who are on a phone. So maybe you can keep an eye on those. Todd Bigerman, welcome.
Hi, Mr. Chair and the committee. I'd like to take a moment to explain how the design of the project manifested and how we arrived at the latest iteration. Clients Jeanette and Davin made some programming comments. Can you hear me, by the way?
Just fine, thank you.
Okay. Programming requirements of note in the early iteration for Mark Peabody and myself. They said, we plan to have a family, we want to live here for a long time, and we have no storage. So we took that under consideration. We inspected the house and the potential for an addition. And it turns out we know the previous owner. She's a very respected carpenter and cabinet maker, and through her tenure in the house, she confirmed our suspicions and those of Dr. McKendry and structural engineer Scott McNeely that the house is in need of structural improvement, and that any addition will demand improvement to the main house. So this type of house, as Ryan said, is a working class structure. So we derived 4 architectural schemes. Jeanette and Davin circulated each one for neighborhood input. and approval, and each successive scheme attempted to accommodate. Scheme 1 had us moving towards the back, but there was a massive tree that is loved by the family. We investigated building downward. I asked Kevin Mulrooney, local excavation contractor, for his input, and he said it was a non-starter due to the quite high bedrock ledge, what it would take to get that rock out of sight, and the subsurface water that runs all year under a project he excavated right across the street. We investigated an upward and rearward design. That scheme also brought concerns from neighbors regarding view shed and light availability. Finally, Scheme 5 was submitted to Ryan and staff. Ryan and staff worked with us with multiple remarks, backs and forths, clarifications, and suggested design changes. And each time, Jeanette and Davin were amenable, and we implemented the suggested changes from staff, and they were valid. What's before you is Scheme number 7. We feel it embodies a balance between homeowner programming, neighborhood input, heritage staff input, and structural requirements. And I would like to say that working with Ryan and staff to reach the scheme has made me a believer in Heritage Kingston's true role to find a workable solution, taking into consideration the HCD programming requirements and heritage attribute improvements. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Todd. Looking for other members of the public who may wish to speak. It's your last chance. Seeing none, am I right, Madam Clerk?
That is correct, Mr. Chair. I don't see any further hands.
Okay, thank you. We move then on to committee members. Ask questions, etc., etc. Remembering this is your chance to speak. Who, if any, wishes to speak? Councillor Oosterhoff, recognizing you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yeah, thanks everyone for this. I'm just catching up a little bit on some of this and appreciate everybody's inputs here. What is it meant by period appropriate windows for this location? Does that mean all the windows are changing? I see what they're including. Are all the windows changing in this building? In this house, sorry.
Who wants to answer that? Ben? Ryan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to the member. Yes, it's my understanding that all the windows are to be removed. They're not good windows at the moment, and the windows that'll be in there are designed to be the appropriate material and style for the period of the era of that building. That's what that statement meant.
Okay, thank you.
I just concerned, like, how does that compare to other decisions we've made about windows? Like, how does that differ from the last two discussions we've had? Like, so in this situation, all the windows can change and don't need to be retained. How is that different than Sydenham Street or Middle Road?
Still Ryan?
The windows, Mr. Chair, in this building are later additions. There are various styles and various eras. None of them are original to the building, and that's a big distinction. They're not repairable, period appropriate windows currently, and the plan currently is to make them all uniform and bring them in. That's the big distinction. Okay,
that helps me. I didn't know that. I thought maybe so. I do appreciate everyone's discussions here, and I'm inclined to be supportive. I am. The last speaker noted that this is something that where our role really is to find a way to make these homes livable and about the quality of life. And I also hear that. I also hear Ms. Bailey's concerns, but I think that there's a balance struck here that is in the end going to be very positive, and that the quality of life of people and the neighborhood. So I like what I see, and I'm sympathetic to it. Thank you.
Good, thank you very much. Other members of the committee? Don Taylor.
Thank you. I'm sure there'll be many questions in this rather controversial application. I'll just begin with one which I think is important. In the staff report, there's a reference to 5 questions about alterations that were taken from the HCD plan that are meant to be a guide to acceptable alterations. And I think in the report, there is a discussion of them, but I didn't see a discussion of the fifth question. That fifth question is essentially this: if similar alterations were permitted throughout the district, would the cumulative effect be acceptable? Ryan, could you answer that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I believe that response is in the staff report. Perhaps I didn't speak to it specifically in my presentation. I'm trying to find where I spoke. Well, I guess just off the top of that, the report again, Mr. Chair. The applicants in this particular case have put a lot of effort into researching and understanding the contribution of this particular building on the character and characteristics of the streetscape and of the district itself. The design that they have landed on, as Mr. Bigger mentioned, is a number of iterations into this process, which I think makes for a good project, and we can have a good back and forth with staff and committee and the proponents, and they're willing to consider suggestions. So this application has come a long way to the point where the proposal that they have before us is a well-researched, well-thought-out design that maintains the profile and those specific characteristics of this property that contribute to the district. So in response to the members' comment, if this is the precedent-setting proposal, which we don't like the term precedent-setting. I mean, every situation has specific characteristics, specific considerations that are specific to its property and its role. But regardless, I think this is a good example to hold up for future applications. And if you do the research, you do understand your building's role in the overall district, that an outcome can be achieved. And I think this does satisfy question number 5 in the district plan. Thank you.
Could I just follow up a little bit?
Yes, please do.
As we all know, there are many rental properties in the districts, and landlords would just love to be able to raise the roof 7 feet and build an addition larger than the original house. How can staff refuse them when they have, well, you've sort of tried to answer that, but the point is that staff do not make decisions on applications such as this. It's up to council and it's up to the tribunal. And once the precedent is there, can you see that council and tribunal will not take it as a precedent for other applications?
Did you wish me to respond, Mr. Chair?
Either you or Jennifer has a hand up, whichever you prefer.
Well, I will pass it to Director Campbell, and after I just say one minor thing, I guess. I certainly can't speak for the board. We can't speak for what the board would do and what the council would do. But I think, as I said, I think we have to look at each of these cases and individually, and if the next property comes in with similar contribution to the district, we would look at it and we would consider its impacts on the character of the district. And if a change to roof profile is acceptable in those situations, then we would support those as well. So as I said, we look at each of these very specifically on the role that property plays in the overall district. So I'll happily pass that to Director Campbell.
Okay, Dr. Campbell.
Thank you so much, and through you. Yeah, I would just echo what Ryan said, and I think important to emphasize here that precedent can't be separated from the cumulative application that we're looking at today. So to suggest that the alteration to the roof sets a precedent would also suggest that every other aspect of this approval sets a precedent as well, including the restoration and conservation of elements on the property. And this is where the concept of precedent, though an important discussion and certainly one that we're very aware of, has to be put into the context of each application. And again, to Ryan's point, we can't speak to what could happen at a tribunal. We cannot speak to what the decision of council ultimately could or should be, but we can speak to the fact that the word precedent also needs to conclude all aspects of this application in collection and in correspondence with each other. We would not see the alteration of this roof to be precedent setting and therefore applicable to all other roofs in the district, because that question 5 really does ask about the other aspects of the proposal and how, when weighted together, there is either a collective negative or positive or neutral impact on the district. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Don, you still have the floor if you want it.
No, thanks. Thank you.
For members, Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. I just wonder if we could take another look at page, I think it's page 49, or on the schedule is page 6, where it shows the street view of the building and the addition, including the house on the left. It looks to me like the house on the left has a similar kind of addition with an entrance on the side. And it also looks like the addition at the back of the house to the left is higher up. And I just wonder, was that a later addition or is that of the same age? If somebody could speak to the house to the left. I'm trying to get a feel. I wish I had walked down the driveway myself, which I didn't do, but I'm trying to get a feeling for the streetscape.
Ryan, can you answer that one? What happened at 83?
Well, Mr. Chair, I'm not entirely certain which address is the member speaking specifically to the property immediately to the left?
Yes, if you look at the photograph that you have included on page 49 of the agenda, which actually is the updated and the present house and the proposed updating, you'll see that 83 has a similar addition and a similar doorway at street level, obviously on the other side of the house.
Well, I can confirm, Mr. Chair, that it was done prior to the district plan coming into place. As I've been here that long, I recall additions, and that was certainly one that was done before my time. So it was done before the district plan was in place.
So that's probably as far as we can do at present, Councillor Doherty.
Okay, thanks. But I guess will the addition, by the way it looks, the picture at the bottom that shows the door, I mean, it's a little bit, it doesn't really represent what it's going to end up looking like, because the door looks awfully narrow. I don't think a human person would fit through that door the way it's drawn at the moment. So I'm trying to work out what the final street view will look like, and will it look the same to the house to the left? And I suspect it would. And the rest of the roof, like, there's not going to be much of a streetscape impact, will there be? Any different than the house to the left?
I see Jennifer's hand up, but Ben, can you help us on this one?
Sure. And through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor. And yes, the rendering that we used there in the heritage impact statement was a little bit skewed, so it is not an accurate representation, but the renderings prepared by Todd and Mark's team are a little bit more accurate. And I believe Ryan showed some of them in the proposal. The side addition is anticipated to be approximately 1.3 meters wide, which would provide for a standard door. It lines up fairly closely with the adjacent house, not exact. And I believe from our historic research on the street that adjacent house side door is much earlier, but it's designed, or the proposed renovation has been designed to complement what is happening right next door, if that answers your question.
It does. It does. Thanks. I thought that's what you were trying to aim for, and I think actually it looks just fine. Thanks.
Okay, just going to go to Dr. Campbell before I recognize Jane. You had a comment there.
I just want to reference the before, the current and the proposed are, I think, Councillor Doherty, you may find helpful on the bottom of page 50, as well as the bottom of page 51. Those do show the adjacent property and the relationship of the two properties, both current and proposed.
Okay, thank you. Jane McFarlane.
Thank you. I have 4 questions, and the first 2 are regarding adherence to the guiding principles, particularly number 6 and 7 in the conservation of built heritage properties. My first question is about reversibility. This property is described as significant to the district and by district definition is considered a heritage property. Dr. McKendry's architectural history and photos of the property showing the roof beams support that the roof line is original. How is removing and replacing the entire roof structure of the existing dwelling going to be reversible in the future?
Either Ryan or the proponents want to answer that one?
I can go first, Mr. Chair.
Okay,
perhaps,
Ryan.
Perhaps Ben or Dr. Paterno wants to jump in. The alteration to this building is substantial. The removal of the roof is substantial. It's not going to be reversible. I mean, it's not. But when you look at the characteristics of this building with the brick wall and its profile and its massing, those features are being retained and they're being improved with the number of conservation efforts that the owners are proposing. And if the addition at some point was to be removed, those features are still there and could be reinstated. So it's a tough one. And in my opinion, and I mean, we all struggle with this application, and our opinion as staff is that this meets all the other tests of the district plan and of the guiding principles and of the OP, and on a whole, with all the works that the owners are putting into this resource and what they're proposing, will contribute to the overall characteristics of the district and will not have a negative impact. So if someone in the future wanted to restore it back to its original humble beginning, it could be done because those primary walls are still there and are still being conserved.
Okay, thank you.
And my next question is about legibility. The staff summary notes that the proposal achieves guiding principles number 1, 4, and 7. But 7 is legibility. That is, new work is distinguishable from the old. Adding matching new courses of bricks and voussoirs to the upper story facade and extending the stucco sidewalls so that the roof can be raised and the pitch can be altered will create a false historic impression that these new courses, the new roof pitch and extended sidewalls, were original to the dwelling. How are these new brick courses, extended sidewalls, and altered roof pitch legible? That is, new, distinguishable from the old.
Ryan, do you want to try that or pass it on to the designers?
Good questions, Mr. Chair. Good questions. My goodness. It's tough. It's a tough balance, Mr. Chair, and the member has raised very pertinent point. The option to make it distinguishable would be to do a different material across that half a meter at a foot and a half, whatever, 2 feet, between the top of the windows and the new roof pitch to make it clearly distinct. And I believe we did something similar at North Street for that building, that stone building. But in this case, that would, I think, sort of lose the balance of this building. And it would lose the symmetry with the windows, with the design of the facade. it's an option, but quite frankly, I think we were supportive of what is proposed because I think it would add to the evolving nature of this district and to this property. And when wandering down Gore Street in the future, it would probably look completely in place and right for the building. So yeah, it's a challenge, and we are requiring the owners to base these alterations on earlier pictures and earlier original designs, things like the eave returns and the roof, or the chimney profiles and the like, will be based on documentary evidence. So they will be restoration. But no, the roof pitch has changed. It's new, and the extra half a meter on above the windows is new. There's no way of getting around that. So that is a challenge. But one of the things that we've added, Mr. Chair, to help distinguish the front from the back, and the owners have been agreeable to it, is to extend the wooden horizontal shiplap siding on the additions to make a clear distinction halfway back to the building, so one can see that the building, it started as a smaller building and then grew to the rear. So that was something that was added to help clearly distinguish that part of the evolution, and we think that adds to that. So I don't know if that answers the question to the member, or if Ben would like to add on to that. But
thank you. No, Andrea is going to make a comment as well.
Hello, through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much. So just to add to Ryan's excellent comments there, I think I'm curious to hear if the committee thinks in this case it would make sense to provide some visual legibility for the extra height. Because I think very much when we're applying those guidelines, it really depends on the balance of the application and the balance of the design. So I've seen quite a few where, some differences in the masonry could be used to kind of make that legible. I think we're curious to hear if that's something that the committee thinks in this case is really critical. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Back to you, Jane.
Yeah, thanks. My third question is about the stucco sidewalls. Repair and retention of the historic stucco / rough cast sidewalls is referred to in the staff report, but the plans and correspondence refer to new stucco and full replacement of existing material. In order to clarify the intent regarding repair and retention versus replacement of sidewall stucco, what are the plans for the stucco? And has a heritage mason viewed and given an opinion on the viability of the existing stucco?
Ryan, do you want to start on that one? And
only to say, Mr. Chair, that I understand it's a mix of repair and new, but I would ask perhaps Mr. Biggerman or Mr. Peabody to speak to this specifically.
Yeah, okay, either Todd Bickerman or Mark. If you can put a hand up and I can get you recognized. Todd, okay.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have had Upper Canada Stonehouse Group take a look at the brick facade, and they've determined that it does need to be rehabilitated. To my knowledge, and perhaps Mark can weigh in on this, we have not had the stucco looked at. It's a very good point, and we will do so to see whether or not it's viable. I do know that the stucco was actually applied over wood siding historically, so there's a question of how the original stucco is adhered to the wood siding and how well it's remained adhered. So that is to be determined stucco wise, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Mark Peabody, do you want to comment at all on that?
Yeah, just as Todd said, we haven't really investigated the condition of the stucco, and don't have a comprehensive plan on that one as compared to the brickwork. It's not evident at this point whether that, how old is that stucco, what's underneath it. There might be clapboard underneath it for all that we know at this point. So I think we'll have to assess that as we get into the project.
Okay,
but we're
thank you.
we're willing to restore it if that's if it's of value and restorable. So.
Thanks. And finally, my fourth question is about the intent of heritage conservation districts and Part 4 designation. The reference in the report to this property not being Part 4 designated seems to imply that alteration to the facade of the original building can be acceptable, but this seems contrary to the definition of heritage properties in the old Sydenham Heritage Conservation District and raises my fourth question. Once the old Sydenham HCD was in place, was the intent to continue to separately designate properties as Part 4 in this HCD, or does Part 5 designation provide the heritage protection needed for all heritage properties in the district?
Ryan, that's probably old. Andrea, Jennifer and Andrea are going to try that one. Give you a break. Dr. Campbell?
Thank you. I can certainly start, and Andrea can follow up if I've missed anything. Part 4s and Part 5s are not mutually exclusive. They're never meant or intended to be so. The fact that there is a Part 5 district plan in place does not preclude future designations of Part 4 properties within the district. And in no way is the establishment of an HCD meant to stop or alter the opportunity to consider a Part 4 as it exists. I think the distinction that staff are drawing in the report is that at present, this property is part of an HCD listed in Part 5 and has those considerations. Unlike other properties, we don't see an additional designation through a Part 4 process, which might list in more detail specific attributes for contribution outside of those contributing to the district plan feel experience. But you are correct insofar as that, well, I guess what I'm trying to clarify is that these are not mutually exclusive designations or opportunities. Similarly, we could enter into a heritage easement agreement within an HCD on a Part 4 property and explore many layers of protection and consideration under the Ontario Heritage Act.
Good, thank you. And out of the minutes comment, I seem to remember that we have designated something in a district in the last few years, and I couldn't tell you. Yeah, Andrea?
Thank you so much, through you, Mr. Chair. Just to add on to Jen's excellent comments there, the HCD plan actually specifically speaks about the role of Part 4s within the Part 5 designated area. So the way that we've set it up in this area is that both remain significant. And I would just note that that is an option. The way that some municipalities do it is they switch entirely right over to Part 5. And then my opinion is that in that situation, you end up with a little bit of a different discussion based on those layers. And so I just wanted to mention that this is really addressed in the plan that says the Part 4s are going to stay. We're adding in the overall layer of the Part 5, and we may continue to designate additional properties under Part 4. So because the plan sets it up that way, it's essentially using both tools. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks for clarifying. Those are my questions.
Okay, thank you, Jane. Don Mitchell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, if you can hear me.
Yes, I can.
So I wanted to approach this a little bit a different way. So my take on it is we're being asked to support these recommendations to council. So I just want to drill down into what I'm supporting. So the first thing is that this is Part 5, and I just wondered if I could get staff to clarify. So what is the intent of a Heritage Kingston committee member in terms of Part 5 coming to the committee versus a staff approval that goes directly to council with a Part 5 policy already created? So just a little comment about that. And then I also wanted to speak to the public expectation of a Part 5 designation. And I just wanted to talk about, because I went through the process when this was all done and participated, I just wanted to speak a little bit about the user guide where it talks about Designation entails a municipal requirement for a heritage permit for any significant change to the public face of your property, i.e. front, sides, and roof, but not usually the rear. And then to skip over it, it goes on to talk about that staff would work to get a compatible alteration. And so my first question is sort of the role of the public, what public expectation is, and the role of the committee, drilling down into what we sort of expect from a part 5 and what the committee is expected to sort of weigh in on a part 5.
Ryan, yeah, start with you.
I'll start answering this, and if one of my colleagues wants to jump in, maybe. So it sounds like the member, Mr. Chair, is asking about the role of the committee and the role of the public. Districts are largely they're largely front end, a lot of public consultation at the early stages, and that includes public consultation and consultation with the committee to form these policies. There's a lot of that goes on, and that's a huge role for particularly the committee, who has a consultation role to play at that stage and in formulation of those policies. So that's a big step. Similarly, the public gets asked about their feelings about the district and what makes it special, what it is that needs to be conserved going forward, what changes, how do we manage change as the district evolves. So those are all key questions that are done early on in the stage. Now we're at the sort of implementation stage where change is being proposed and we're being asked to manage it. The committee's role in this is to help feed into that discussion when it goes to council. There is, as you know, there is no formal role for the committee in an alteration application under Part 5. We've done this Made in Kingston process because we value the input of this group and the expertise that it brings. It helps bring a fulsome recommendation and package to council, who are then asked to then make a decision on changes in the district. So that's the committee's role. The public at this point, like any public decision made at council, has a role to comment if they choose to, through proper delegation, written comments, and the like. I don't know if that answers your question. I don't know if my colleagues want to jump in and add to that, but I hope that explains that for you.
Yes, it does. Thank you. So what I was trying to drill down to is that normally in a Part 5 decision, the actual Heritage Committee of the municipality isn't necessarily consulted. This is an elective choice that Kingston has made, correct? Okay. So I had a couple other questions. I think basically 3 more, but 2 of them are kind of linked. So the other one I wondered about was, are there Part 4 examples of a significant change to a public face? And by that, I guess I'm implying the vertical height, something that wouldn't be noticeable from the streetscape in that plane. Are there Part 4 examples of that? And then my second question would be about the roof pitch, where the length of the roof is about 12 feet. The original face of the structure, I think, is 18.5 feet. Granted, it's on a slope, but we're now being asked to see what I would say is a very imposing change to a building from the streetscape. So those sort of 2 aspects. One is the change of the wall height. The other one is what I would argue is a very significant plane, visible plane from the streetscape in comparison to the original structure. Are there Part 4 examples of that? And then the second one is, are there Part 5 examples of applications that have been approved?
Ryan, how's your memory?
Oh, Mr. Chair. Well, so I think 2 Part 4s come to mind that might, I suppose, be helpful. And I mentioned earlier the Queen City Oil building in Douglas Park on North 9 North. is an example of the roof was actually recreated and heightened, lifted up approximately half a meter, I give or take. It was recreated at the same pitch, however, it was lifted up and there was an increase to the wall height. The other example that comes to mind is the corner of Wellington and Brock, which of course is the big, they call it the Kensington building now, which had a significant roof addition added to it and a tower feature recreated. So that was a significant change to the roof aspect. In a Part 5 setting, Mr. Chair, I'm drawing a blank as far as changes to the front of the building goes. Certainly the major changes to 81 King Street come to mind as an addition that came out sort of towards the street. However, very different situation, very different property. I'm not sure exactly if that helps the member, but that's my memory in this regard.
All right, thank you for that. I appreciate putting you on the spot. So my next question is, are there examples that you're aware of where a heritage approval is given that is a significant change in a Part 5 in advance of the planning amendments that are required, where the planning amendments are not supported, and therefore the application has to come back to heritage because of a change of design that would be required because the supporting amendments are not found to be in place?
Really testing my memory here, Mr. Chair, again. The one that comes to mind immediately when you bring that up, Mr. Mitchell, is our friends at 85 King, because we specifically mentioned it in our staff report that there was concern from a Planning Act perspective that we received, and it may or may not require them to come back to committee. I'm sure some of the, maybe Mr. Chair can remember some that have happened in the past where we've had to revisit approvals. It's possible that it would have to come back, but we try to flag these concerns early, particularly for many of our colleagues that comment if there's engineering concerns or if there's planning concerns or what have you. Nobody wants to have to come back and revisit something again. It's better to have all those ducks in a row before we forward this on to council. But typically applicants do like to get their Heritage Act approvals done ahead of other approvals. And we try to build in enough flexibility in the approval that if there's a minor tweak, we can do it in-house. Otherwise, it's a risk they run to have to come back.
Yeah, Dr. Campbell.
I apologize. I have a dog barking very loudly in my house, but thank you, and through you. Thank you so much, Ryan. I think that was an excellent response. I just wanted to add to this that our technical circulation, the fact that policy is always advancing at the city, that amendments are always forthcoming, really precludes us from being able to, we warn applicants, if you want to call it a warning, or we inform them that, there are going to be changes made and that reconsideration may be required if those new policy amendments or alterations impact previous direction. And so we certainly want to help people to be aware of that, but at any point in any city, policies, processes, amendments are always forthcoming. And so we would never really be in a situation where we could say everything is understood, done and dusted and guaranteed for all time. So I just wanted to add that, and this is part of the technical circulation process. We have received questions about the circulations in the past about why we circulate to the departments that we do. And your question actually speaks very strongly to why we do that, because we are trying to invite in for the applicant's awareness what other things may be needed, but also what could be forthcoming that they might want to consider in the timeline of their specific project and their proposal. So thank you. I did just want to take this opportunity to also add our examination of precedents and precedent setting decision making is also something that we consider in our discussions and our reports to committee. I raise this because I know Ryan's been doing a very good job of drawing past examples, but I just wanted to indicate that this is not a full examination or like for like comparison when we are drawing other examples forward. And I will reference our earlier comments on the concept of precedent for us is a very uncomfortable use of terminology insofar as that every application needs to be considered as a complete entity and its impact not only to its designation or its district or its heritage easement agreement. So though we may see similar processes in the past, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're indicating those are like for like kind of precedent or relationship-based decisions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'd also comment on that the comments from the city, other city departments are often quite interesting and lead to changes. We spent a few years ago a lot of time trying to persuade Kingston Hydro to put hydro boxes around the sites or to cover them. Their original argument was, no, they've got to be readily accessible. And I think that policy changed after a while. So it is worth looking at those comments and the applicant especially being warned that, hey, do you know you've got a high voltage line going over your house? You may not have known that. Do you have another question?
Yeah, I just have one more, Mr. Chair. So through you, I would just like to drill a little further down into those Heritage District Plan considerations. And I want to look at the wording where it talks about if these alterations are commonly applied through the district, would the cumulative impact be acceptable? And we didn't really in the previous response get into the built form. So my question would be to take that and sort of say, do we have a sense that if every third and fourth house were to enact this type of an alteration, does it hold up in relation to the district plan? Are we comfortable with the wording of that saying commonly applied and cumulative impact in terms of looking at the district as a whole, if every structure was to go to that magnitude of built form scale?
Try that one, Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think we've talked about precedents, and Director Campbell has spoken to precedents. We had this particular project, as I've said before, is one that we feel has little impact to the characteristics of the district. If other proponents come in and have an application that has little to no impact on the characteristic of the district, then certainly we'd support it. As I said, each property is different. Each building has different characteristics, and it's hard to use that, to look at that question and say, what happens if every third building has a higher roof? Well, if they're done in a way that has little impact to the district, then it's supportable. If they come and their roofs are completely changed, or they're inappropriate, or they're a different profile, different style, precedents are something that we, as Dr. Campbell mentioned, we consider in our proposal or in our review, and it's something we take very seriously. And it's tough that because each of these properties have various different circumstances, that it's hard to then carry over one approval to the next. And it's hard to look at just the roof on its own. There's so much more restoration work going on in this property that as a package, it's a good package. It's one that we are supportive of. And if that's the case, on the next application, we're going to support it as well. So I don't know if that answers the question, or one of my colleagues wants to jump in, but thank you.
I'll recognize Dr. Johnson as an answer to that question and no more.
Yes, that's correct. And I just want to thank you for Mr. Mitchell for that. I mean, I totally get that concern over precedents. And I mean, I think one thing I just would add, and it's sort of being talked about before, is that our yard is a bit unique in that with the Wellington Street Schoolhouse, it's limited the backyard. I mean, obviously if we could, we would have, concentrated the building in the back. It's just that it if you look, for example, at 73 Gore Street, they had a, very much different lot. And most of the lots, frankly, in Sydenham Ward do have space in the back, to accommodate. So I would just again add, like in terms of precedence, that it is a unique lot that I hope carries some sway. And I don't think, speaking with neighbors, I think the majority of people in Sydenham Ward are not looking to do big additions to their house. And so I personally think it's unlikely to see a huge wave of people wanting to expand their houses like this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Further committee questions? And I'm not seeing any hands. So I will go on to final committee comments, remembering, Paul, sorry.
No, that's all right. No, that was me, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question of Ryan, if I could. Ryan, I'd just like some further clarification on part 4, part 5. So were you saying, or no, you weren't saying anything. It's me. I need clarification here. So if I have a property that isn't designated, but I want to make alterations, perhaps substantial alterations, can I circumvent part 4 and go directly to part 5 and therefore not have really any input from or meaningful input from the sounds of it from this committee? Or how is this working? I'm still trying to get my head around part 4 and part 5, I guess.
Through you, Mr. Chair. It's rare to do, and okay. Part 4 designations are site-specific designations. Typically, they're one property that you look at, as we've talked in the past. You look at the criteria in the Heritage Act to designate property of interest. So it's physically or designed in a way that meets the criteria to interesting type of building or that type of thing, or to a good example of a type of building. It's either or has associative value with a certain prominent person, event, people, that type of thing, or it's contextually important to the area, or it's a landmark, those type of things. So those are looked at individually on the property. A part 5 is a broader look at usually it's a broader area. There are some examples of individual properties, but for the most part, districts are a community. They're a gathering of buildings in a certain designated area that has similar characteristics, has evolved in a similar manner, has a history and a cohesion with each other of their characteristics for that area. So you can have a part 4 in a part 5, or you can have properties in a part 5 that don't have a part 4, or you can have properties in a part 5 that have a heritage district or a heritage easement agreement on them. Typically, the part 5 is a broader blanket policy. It has the more detailed plan associated with it that helps manage and guide change in that district. And that plan is the one that is circulated, it is consulted with committee, with the public, well in advance of drafting it, so that it's drafted in the way that the public and the committee feel guides change appropriately for that particular district and maintains the heritage value of that particular district. So that's why there's a little distinction in when you do alterations. There's less of a role, because all of that is felt to have been flushed out through that consultation process. So kind of a complicated answer for a simple question, I think, but it's a number of things. I think I've sort of lost my train of thought on that one, Mr. Chair, but I think I answered the question.
Okay.
Does the member have more that?
Well, I guess again, and maybe I didn't phrase it properly. I'm concerned. Well, and there's the word precedent has been used a lot, and I guess I'll use it too. I'm a little concerned that people will see this perhaps going forward as a circumvention of part 4, and just if they can't go directly to part 5, and I'm not sure that's a good thing.
They're two very different things, I think, Mr. Chair. I wouldn't call it a circumvention. Part 5s are done for a different reason, I think, than part 4s, but they work together or they work separately. It depends on the resource.
Okay, All right. I'll leave it there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Dr. Campbell, you're going to elucidate.
I just wanted to add thank you, and through you, I just thought, Mr. Benfield, you might benefit from just thinking about it a little bit. If I tried to draw an example of where one might actually suggest that a Part 4 was in some way being kind of set aside because of an HCD guideline. So not what's happening in this case, but I'm trying to think of an example where such a thing might happen. If there was an individual heritage property that was designated under Part 4 that had specific considerations, I don't know, let's say all the siding was designated as being important to the character of that building as an important attribute. If we then had an HCD plan that offered additional direction, maybe siding can be replaced with this acceptable alternative, then we might be in a situation where somebody would reference the HCD plan as a justification to an alteration on an attribute defined in the Part 4. But that is where staff and the committee would have an opportunity to look at how those two items may be in conflict and not set one aside per se, but try to ensure that the intents of the HCD are being met against the specific attributes of the individual property. So we're never positioning them kind of against each other. They're really meant to act in concert. Individual building, individual attributes, larger designation, district-wide, neighborhood-based. Ideally, those two should play together. Change the little building, impact or don't impact the larger district, working in harmony. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Campbell. I think we ran out of questions, so we move on to making your final comments. Anybody wish to add to what they have said before? Don Taylor and then Councillor Oosterhoff.
Yes, thank you. It's a serious matter, I think, when staff and committee members completely disagree on an application. It's not a question of understanding the issues. I think heritage staff raised all the concerns that the committee has raised with the applicants, but staff have a different perspective from the committee. As city employees, they want to support and assist customers, and likewise councillors want to support and assist their constituents. They don't want to say no. Unhappy applicants can cause problems, but there are no problems if applications are approved. When the OHA was brought in to protect heritage properties, a central component was that members of the public, through a heritage committee, were closely involved. And under the OHA, it was the committee's responsibility to make recommendations to council. The committee, the Heritage Committee, is at arm's length from applicants and staff and is better able to make tough decisions. We want applicants to be happy also, and often we are able to make good suggestions that applicants appreciate. But there are times when it's important to say no, and we have to take leadership in such cases. We know that applicants will be disappointed if the application is refused, but we all realize that when we choose to be part of a community, we must abide by the rules of the community, and that, of course, includes heritage districts. So we have an application that conflicts with district guidelines, not just slightly, but very significantly. It has a roof to be raised about 7 feet, has a front facade raised about 20 inches, raising the eaves, inserting voussoirs and a fascia board above the second floor windows. With these changes, the character of the house changes from a modest, minimal 2-story house to a full 2.5-story house. The rear addition is higher and wider than the original house and doubles the floor area. This alteration will be totally irreversible. It's contrary to district guidelines, city official plan and zoning, and good heritage conservation practice. It should not be approved on its own merits, and even more so because of the danger for the district. There are many rental houses in the districts, and landlords would love to expand their houses in similar fashion. there's been some discussion of precedents here, and staff say we don't consider this a precedent, but the real question is whether the LPAT on appeal will consider this to be a precedent, and I think they will. So it's important that we do not support approval. It's not just about this application, the larger question whether the HCD plan is relevant in protecting the district in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Don Taylor. Jane McFarlane.
Thank you. Removing the original roof and altering the existing property by adding to the front and side walls is contrary to HCD and 2 of the 8 guiding principles in the conservation of heritage property, that is reversibility and legibility. Once the roof structure is removed and replaced, it is highly unlikely that this material could be conserved and that the roof could be returned to its original state. By adding to the front and side walls and changing the roof pitch, a 2-story building will be converted to a 2.5-story building. The design of the conversion will give a misleading impression of the original roof line and mass and scale of the building. Although it was suggested today that demarcating the alterations on the facade could be discussed, this is not part of what is being considered today. It is also important to note that the conservation that is proposed for this original building, such as repointing of brick, reinstating the original chimney, introducing heritage appropriate windows and doors, etc., can all be done without altering the original building. Adhering to best practice and Old Sydenham Heritage Conservation District guidelines would leave the roof and walls of the original house intact. Supporting the staff recommendation and this proposal for this 1840s historic property rated significant to the district will essentially leave intact only the foundation, door and window openings, and a front brick facade and sidewall stucco frame, which will have been altered. For these reasons, I cannot support the staff recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Oosterhoff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, it's yeah, I see it the other way on this file. Though I really appreciate the discussion from everyone. I think that this is a support. I can support the staff recommendation here. I thought Mr. Ryan did a good job when I was wondering too about the point about the accumulated effect, and I think that this project is, I think sometimes the imagined is worse than the reality, and that's often true in life, I think. So in this case, we have a family home here. It's not a landlord occupied intention here. I think it reflects a very good package. A lot of considerations have been made. I think there's an incredible match to the property, right? The pictures do not show it well, but I went to Streetscape and I could see the building on the left much better on Streetscape Google Maps. And I think that there will be a significant match, it will match the streetscape that we would be looking for. So I don't think it's going to have a negative impact. And I think that it's important to understand and realize what the quality of life of the people who are living there and who are investing in this and doing everything they can to be sympathetic and make this project as compatible as possible and having a great life in that place and being respectful of heritage. So I think that's like someone said, that's our true role here, and so I'm pleased to be able to support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Don Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. So my take on it is I have to ask myself, what's my role in this? And I'm being asked a very clear question, which is whether I support the approval of these recommendations. And maybe that's nuanced, but I also recognize that this is an elective thing. So somebody doesn't have to ask me this. We're appointed by council, but they don't have to ask me, but we're on the hook to vote on whether or not we support the approval of the recommendation. So I look at the first part of the recommendation. I look at items 2 and 3. Those are the most problematic for me of the recommendation. And then I look at the Heritage Conservation District plan direction, and the language says consideration of these questions. And I look at the question number 1 is partially affected in my opinion. So it's not all the way, but I still think that there's hang up there. Question number 4, I think is, from my perspective, is definitely a yes. I do think that another design could minimize these impacts. And then I look at question number 5. And again, I say yes, because I think the word precedent has been thrown around, but that's not actually, to my mind, what the question is asking. The question is being very clear to me to ask, if it was commonly applied, would the cumulative impact? So it's not asking me, is this particular application creating a precedent? It's actually just asking me, if you were to do this cumulatively through the whole district, what would be the effect? And I see that as a very different conversation than precedent. So I'm hugely appreciative of the work of the applicants and all the different experts and agents and people that have been involved with them. And I'm hugely appreciative of staff's work on this. And I do understand, I believe I understand staff's recommendation on this. And so if I'm being asked, do I support the process? I do support the process and everything that's happened. If I'm being asked, do I support this iteration of the application, that becomes a lot more difficult for me. And if I'm being asked, do I support the staff recommendation? I mean, I have to respect that staff have a greater grasp and understanding of this than I may have. So those are 3 different questions for me. And I do support the staff recommendation in terms of the work that they've done, and I do support the process, but even in this moment, I'm still really hung up that this iteration of the application is what I would support approval to as the recommendation to council. So those are my thoughts on that.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say one of the previous speakers mentioned that sometimes councillors don't want to say no because they're thinking about, I don't know, next election or the districts or, but I just want to say I have no problem saying no if I feel like I need to say no. But councillors also consider other issues at play, and there were a lot of comments regarding student housing and pressure from that kind of intensification. But that's not what we're looking at here. We're looking at a family home downtown where we do need to have more intensification. We don't want to expand the urban boundary. Looking at the streetscape and those 5 questions, the way I see it, the drawings and the house next to it, I really don't see that there will be a negative impact from the streetscape. And I do believe that the heritage character, although there will be changes by going up and the addition, there will be changes, but we're still protecting the character, the heritage character of this building, and considering all of those needs of the community, of the greater community, as well as that. I think the final product will look pretty good, very good actually, and it's matches the house next door, where obviously there was already intensification there. I think intensification doesn't have to take away from heritage. I understand the concerns of the community, but we also can't have this particular application or applicants pay for the concerns of student housing, which is a very different conversation. And we keep getting told actually by staff that we can't differentiate between rental and homeowners and who's actually living in the building. But in this case, I think it does matter because there's a family and it's long-term vision. There's no reversing in this project because you are getting a very different home, but preserving the heritage character of the home. So I support it. I do appreciate the conversation. There's a lot in here. I think we need to delve deeper into that and make sure that staff address these kind of concerns for any kind of discussions going forward with any other applications. But for this one, I think the streetscape and the heritage feel and character of the building will be preserved. So I will support it.
Thank you very much. Other members wishing to comment? Ted Smith, Ted.
I understand that the word precedent is something that may or may not apply to this. I think more of it as a slippery slope. Once you start making a change to one place, then the neighbors have some right to say, well, why can't I do the same thing? I have a great affinity for Sydenham Ward. I actually had a unit about a block up on Gore Street from this. My sister had a unit on Gore Street at Bagot. My best friend lived in the opposite side, and I dated a young woman who lived in the beautiful Gore View apartments. I've lived in Wellington Street, William Street, and for many years I was a resident on West Street. I actually many years ago ran for council as a representative for Sydenham Ward, lost out to Helen Cooper, but I have worked on a number of old buildings to renovate them. And I know that the city is slowly starting to slide away from its conservation of our history. And I just see this again as something that once you let one person do something, then you have to open it up to other people in the same neighborhood. And it very slowly can change the entire feel of the neighborhood. So I'm afraid I understand an individual's need to make their house suit their needs, but I just can't support this because I think it has a potential down the road to start to change the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Two of you haven't spoken. Do you wish to? And seeing no reaction there, I would simply comment that my comments were made in dash, and I can support the sorts of things that Ted has just said. That leads us to a vote, that leads to a motion. Need a mover and a seconder. Remember, it cannot be amended or deferred or anything at all. It's as printed in your agenda, a recommendation with 13 points and 14 conditions. Looking for a mover. Moved by Councillor Oosterhoff, seconder. Seconded by Councillor Doherty. Voting, those in favour? 1, 2, 3. Those opposed?
Nay.
1, 2, 3, 4, and a shout for 5. Let me just check that. Sorry, can you keep your hands up for a moment? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that loses 3 to 6. Thank you, Ryan, for the effort you put into that. Thank you, applicants. And we'll see where that one heads. That goes on to council in, I've forgotten where council meetings are, as a defeated motion. We move on to Philip, Montreal, Bank of Montreal. There we go. Morning, Philip. You are muted if you're talking.
Mr. Chair, I think there might be an issue with Mr. Prell's audio as he is unmuted, but we can't hear him still.
Is he in City Hall?
I'm not certain of, Mr. Chair.
And he can't sit around, slide around to somebody else's computer. Oh. Well, we go to Ryan, who asks, Ryan, how are you going to sort your departmental problem out?
If I may, Mr. Chair, if we could maybe just have a quick minute. I think somebody else on our team would probably be able to lead the presentation.
If you can, yeah. And if you can phone Philip and let him know. I don't have a phone number for him. Let's, after it's 11:20, let's do a 5-minute break. Come back at 11:25, if that's okay with people. You probably need a stretch. So 11:25, I'll call you back.
Testing.
We can hear you. That's good.
Oh, classic.
And
I'll see you guys in 5. Hello, everyone. I fixed the problem. My apologies.
Are we all back?
Mr. Chair, if we could just give it another second here to make sure that we have quorum before we
Yeah.
start.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I will note, Mr. Chair, that Councillor Doherty did send me a message noting that she had to leave, so she will not be returning, but I still believe we should have quorum here.
We've got 6 at present. We're missing Councillor Oosterhoff. Oh, there's Ted down, come down there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've got 8. Yes, okay. And it's 11:26. Okay, Philip, welcome back.
Hello, everyone. Through Mr. Chair, my apologies for the technical issues there. It's seems par for the course these days. So the application is about 297 King Street East. I was able to see some of you lovely individuals down at the VMO building for a lighting presentation by the lighting expert who was the agent for the applicant, which was a fantastic experience. And I'll show this a little bit later, some of the pictures that I took there for everyone's benefit. Next slide, please. So the subject property is located on the edge of the Market Square HCD plan area, and you can see that in the bottom right picture there. Next slide, please. These are the 2 subject facades, the northwest and north facades, that will be part of the lighting program related to this application. Next slide, please. The property is designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act through bylaw 84-172 as part of the updated Market Square Heritage Conservation District Plan. The most relevant attributes include the ashlar faced limestone, symmetrically organized facades with 3 centrally placed and oversized openings on each facade, the decorative treatment of the stone characterized by iconic stone pilasters framing the large window and door openings, the door lintels, the ensemble and the crest above the front entrance. And the building also has contextual value as its design contributes to the evolved character of the Market Square Heritage District. Next slide, please. So looking from the top and following that arrow, the top left picture shows the lighting plan in a grayscale and light concentration rendering, along with the projected lighting areas. You can also see a small little map there in between that other picture that shows the north and northeast facades as the ones that will, or northwest and northeast facades, or my apologies, northwest and north facades that will be receiving the lighting treatment. The bottom or the top right picture shows the lighting equipment and its location on the building. The bottom right picture shows an example of the street level lighting. And the bottom left picture shows the similar lighting treatment with a goal that's being sought in this application shown on different buildings. Next slide, please. The subject application seeks to add linear LED fixtures firing upwards to wash the northeast and northwest facades of 297 King Street East and face and form an edge to the district. Each facade will have a similar lighting strategy consisting of linear LED fixtures with a color temperature of 2700 K. Which is equivalent to a warm yellow light. Both lighting systems will be anchored into masonry with stainless steel hardware in discrete areas in accordance with the city's masonry policy, and are proposed to have a bronze Sandtex finish to help blend them in. Neither lighting system will obscure heritage attributes of the building. The column/ensemble lighting system will project light via linear LED fixtures known as lumen facade visually with a lumen output of 1781. This lighting strategy will also softly highlight the detailed frieze/cornice and form a transition to the roofline/crest lighting system to be located above. The lumen facade lights will be attached to masonry and will have an adjustable arm, which can adjust the lighting wash. Precision optics like this should reduce the adjacent property light spill, improve contrast, and limit light pollution. The lumen facade column/ensemble lighting system will be publicly visible, but are to be painted and or colored to reflect the masonry to reduce visual impacts during the daytime. The roofline/crest lighting system is to project light via an LED fixture known as a lumen facade nano system. Visually, with a lumen output of 667, the lumen facade nano lights, which is another precision optic system, will be attached to the masonry with adjustable mounting hardware, which can also be fine-tuned to wash the cornice in the best light possible. The main northwest entrance of the roof line system will also include a focused lumen facade nano lighting system to highlight the crest, which, to be honest, I barely noticed until I was doing this application. And finally, the light fixtures at the top of the ensemble should not be visible from the ground at any level. Next slide, please. The two left pictures are a general representation of the ground level lighting. In this case, due to supply chain issues, which initially delayed this presentation, the lighting bar is wider than what will be installed. So that picture is actually a bit wider than what it would be in terms of the final installation. And the white color temperature is not that yellowish white that is going to be approved through this application. The yellowish white would be better appropriate for washing the patina of limestone. Further, the intensity and direction of these lights can be adjusted to best depict the building after this application is approved. The picture to the right shows existing lighting treatments in and around the district, where some of these same or similar strategies are already enacted, but with less precision than the application before you. The proposed lighting strategy will appropriately highlight the building's key heritage attributes and have a positive influence on the district while maintaining the prominence of the square and City Hall. This lighting strategy conforms to the design guidelines of the district, since the lumen output of 1781 for the column/ensemble will be limited to the building with negligible spillover onto the adjacent sidewalk and buildings, and the lumen output of 667 for the roof line/crest will focus the lighting on the building itself and also show off the other parts of the facade there with the use of precision optics to fine-tune its actual washing. The upward firing lights emphasizes the monumentality of the facade and the more intricate details like the crest, the dentrils, and the cornice of the ensemble, while the warm yellow-white color at an appropriate color temperature of 2700 K complements the building's limestone patina by bringing out the yellow/ochre color. Further, the upwards firing linear LED system is an appropriate lighting type for the district. Upward firing lights are already used elsewhere in the district, and the proposed system should not overpower or conflict with any of the additional lighting systems, or any of the existing lighting systems, nor City Hall or the district's prominence in general. As noted in our HCD plan, quote, heritage conservation districts are not intended to be static places, end quote. This lighting system demonstrates that, quote, the continued evolution of the built environment can contribute to the vitality of the district and cities in general, end quote. It is staff's opinion that this proposal accomplishes exactly this goal as stated in the HCD plan. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to highlight a couple of these recommendations here. So I want to highlight that heritage staff will be involved in the finalization of the lighting strategy, where the finalized specification will be discussed with the applicant prior and post installation to fine tune what's going on. And the masonry alterations are to be done in conformity with the city's masonry policy. Thank you very much.
Good, thank you very much for that. Members, can you confirm your dash comments have been correctly reported? And seeing no complaints, very good. Members of the public who wish to make comments, and I'm not seeing any at present. And I hope I'm not missing anybody. Just slip down there, nobody's gone to the top of my list. Committee members, questions? Don Taylor?
Yes, I don't have any real concerns except with the word in the recommendation referring to an astrological timer. What on earth is an astrological timer?
Eric, can you help us?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to just, if I can just preface my response by saying that we take this evaluation extremely seriously, and we've been impressed with the level of attention that the Heritage Department has placed on this. So I appreciate everyone's time. Astrological clock would be accommodating for sunrise and sunset on a moving spectrum. So as the summer comes along, we're not going to turn the lights on at 7 p.m., but closer to 9:03, 9:04, depending when sunset begins. And as winter starts setting, starts arriving, we will accommodate that sunset as well, which is sometimes closer to 4:30, 5 o'clock.
Good, thank you very much, Don.
Well, as a scientist, I think the word you're looking for is astronomical timer, not astrological timer. Astrologic has to do with signs of the zodiacs and horoscopes and so on. So I think the staff can change that word to astronomical. I just have one other question. I think I understood that when this lighting is implemented, the present level of interior lighting could be much reduced so that it wouldn't be distracting or catching attention. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Other questions, other comments? Madam Clerk, you can probably make that change before it goes on to council, assuming it's a spelling error. That's the way we can do it. Good. Do you want to comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. Unfortunately, it cannot be changed at this time. It is within the hands of this committee, which cannot change it, and it will not be able to be changed until it's in the hands.
Oh, it's a 5,
council.
isn't it? Yeah. Okay. So we need to let. So see if council picks it up. That'll be very good. Other questions, comments? Don Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, I just wanted to thank the applicant and their representatives for how thorough it was, and to staff and the applicants for the opportunity to go down and see the space in its real conditions. It's been mentioned by the committee before about how important site visits can kind of be, and I think it was really important in this case. I just wanted to raise one more aspect, because sometimes I think technology gets a bad rep when it's with heritage, but in this particular case, I do not have great night vision, so I see things as one plane. I don't see a lot of texture and definition. And I remember being across the street with Philip, and all of a sudden the wall just jumped out for me in 3 dimensions, and I saw the quality of the stones and everything. And so I just wanted to raise that this is a great sort of what I would argue is an accessible upgrade, in that people will have a new relationship with the building because of that, and it's only at night and very specific conditions. So I think it's a wonderful technological upgrade to experience heritage. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, no, thank you for that. Other comments? If none, look for, oh, sorry, Jane.
Thanks. I just wanted to say I appreciate the opportunity for the site visit as well, and the fact that Philip's going to keep an eye on things and have a look at the final effect after installation. Great.
And Philip also, he will remember, is when he's talking with the Bank of Montreal people, going to point out the other sign, which still has the poor wiring on it, etc., etc. We won't go into that, but if that can be improved, that'd be great. Further comments? Seeing none, then looking for a mover, I believe. If everybody has had their say, we can't amend, we can't change. It's a one recommendation and 7 conditions as printed. Mover, Don Taylor, seconder. Jane McFarlane, thank you very much. Oh, everybody put their hand up at once then. So we can vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And I think that's everybody. Those against? And that carries. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Philip, for that. As everybody has said, it was a great visit, great actually to get together even, but it certainly shows the benefits of site visits. That moves us on to 290 Johnson Street, which I think again is you, Philip.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. Okay. Let's get my windows up here. Okay, well, thank you again, everyone. Through you, Mr. Chair. This is an application for 290 Johnson Street, which is in basically a restoration / repair for the veranda along the front facade of the building. Next slide, please. The subject property with the municipal address of 290 Johnson Street is located on the south side of Johnson Street, opposite the École Cathedral Elementary School, and nearly adjacent to the corner of Barry and Johnson Street. Next slide, please. The site is developed with a one half of a duplex with 3 stories in height, a detailed brickwork style, and as an associated bat and seam metal roof and a full-length veranda spanning the duplex. 290 Johnson Street, for your information, is the one with the yellow door in the pictures located above. Next slide, please. So the property is designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act through bylaw 215-67, which is part of the Old Sydenham Heritage Conservation District. The inventory notes several relevant cultural heritage attributes to the application, but I wanted to point out the following ones that seem to be the most relevant. The Second Empire influenced stylistic sensibilities, which lend itself to a notable corner property, the full-length veranda with round columns, heavy balustrade, and turn newel post and section of the balustrade spanning the 2 dwellings, and metal shingle roof with hip rolls is a notable feature of this veranda, and its location as an informal gateway into the Old Sydenham ward. Next slide, please. So according to the applicant, various parts of the veranda are in poor condition. We can see some of those in the pictures to the right, where 3 columns have rotted sections. The northernmost newel pole has several structural cracks. All floorboards in the landing and porch are considered to be in poor condition. The top and bottom handrails are deteriorated. The lattice has broken off sections, particularly near the piping. In the east, lattice is not painted. Several balustrades have chipped wood at the bottom connection points, and the paint overall is visibly flaking and bubbling. At this time, the applicant estimates that most of the balustrades on the upper deck can be retained, which is great news, while the floorboards, columns, handrails, newel post, and balustrades for the descending handrail are anticipated to be removed and replicated for this replacement project. Next slide, please. The goal is to replace the deteriorating elements that are beyond repair with new wooden replicas that match the existing design, dimensions, and paint color of the existing veranda. Excuse me. The new deck is to match the existing and mirror the veranda's counterpart at 292 Johnson Street, as they are considered to be one entity. Prior to the necessary dismantling to fully assess the condition of these features, the applicant shall take photos and provide those to staff as a record of its repair. This has been added as a condition of approval. When dismantling the deck, the applicant will examine if further elements can be salvaged to integrate into the replica deck. When commissioning the new like-for-like replacement, wooden veranda elements, a small note or indication shall be made on each piece away from the public view to indicate that they are not part of the original veranda and have been replaced. This has also been added as a condition of approval. Below the veranda and not visible to the public are new PT beams, which will replace the existing beams and will be added at 4 connection points connected to the building foundation to the 16 by 16 inch block piers. The applicant has confirmed the veranda roof will be supported when the porch and associated columns are removed for the duration of the works, and the piping visible to the north front facade to the eastern side facade shall be rerouted during these works. So from the front northern facade to the east, and the piping color shall remain white like the existing to blend in with the repainted veranda color. This has been added as a condition of approval. Next slide, please. I just also wanted to point out here that because there's going to be some connection points to the building, the city's policy on masonry restoration heritage buildings shall be conformed, or shall be followed in this case. So that's it for me. Thank you everyone for your time, and more than willing to answer some questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Philip. Members, confirm your dash comments. Any concerns there? And seeing none, members of the public, do we have owners or anybody with us? I'm just looking down for all the names, not hearing anybody there. Committee members, questions, comments? Don Taylor?
Yes, just a minor one. There's reference to the piping that's to be removed. I'm curious to know what the piping is. I mean, what is being ventilated?
You can address this, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr.
Yes,
Chair.
please do, Phil. Sorry.
So it is part of the HVAC system, and specifically the furnace. So we were able to confirm this with an assessment through discussion with the applicant.
Okay. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Other questions? Comments, concerns? Seeing none. Oh, Jane, sorry.
Hi, thanks. I'm really happy that that piping can be rerouted. I'm really glad you looked into it and that it's been confirmed. It just really will help the streetscape. That's it.
Good, thank you. Others? That leads us to final comments. And that leads us to a mover and a seconder. Moved by Don Mitchell, seconded by Donald Rush, Jane McFarlane. Three alterations and 9 conditions. Those voting in favor, please raise your hand, or Ted.
Aye.
6, 7, I see that. Those against, and that carries by 7-0. So thank you, Phil, for the work you've done on that. And thank you. Oh, we don't have applicants here. So that takes us into Regent Street, Berryfield, 419. Ryan, is that you? Yes.
It's me.
Yep. Well, welcome back.
Thank you. This application is 419 Regent Street. Can I have the next slide, please? The north side of Regent Street, in the mid-block between Drummond and George, in the old, in the Berryfield Village District. Can I have the next slide, please? Property includes a 1.5-story dwelling, originally built in 1850, known as the Thomas Esford House. The building was significantly altered in the late 20th century with additions to the upper floor and rear, replacement of all windows, and the covering of the wood siding with vinyl. Next slide, please. The property is designated under Part 5 as part of the Berryfield Heritage District, originally in 1979 and then updated in 2016. Even though the building has been significantly altered, the plan classifies it as a heritage building and includes the following, includes the attributes such as its 19th century vernacular design, its 1.5-story massing, side gable roof, rectangular plan, and its 3-bay symmetrical facade. Our full description is included in your agenda package under Exhibit B. Section 2 of the village plan describes the cultural heritage value of the district and includes a list of heritage attributes that make Berryfield unique, such as its range of housing influences and the rural village character, its minimal front yard setback, built form of mostly single and semi-detached residential dwellings with 1 to 2 stories in height, distinctive architectural features such as medium pitch gable roof, consistent building scale and mass, and simple rectangular door and window openings with minimal decorative detailing. Next slide, please. What is before the committee today is an application under Section 42 to request approval to remove the current vinyl siding, replace the front portion with horizontal shiplap style wood siding in a green tone, and the rear portion of the dwelling in a vinyl board and batten profile style siding in a slightly darker tone. The current windows, which are later replacement units, are to be replaced with vinyl windows in a period appropriate style, primarily 2/2 sash, with buttons affixed to the exterior of the glass. A new window opening is proposed on the west side of the building at the rear, on the rear addition. The application also includes a proposal to remove a small side vestibule addition and the construction of a new, slightly larger single-story vestibule with an attached 2.5 by roughly 3-meter covered porch structure. The vestibule will be clad in the same board batten profile composite siding with a dark asphalt shingle pitch roof. Supporting information, including letters, elevation plans, and renderings, and various pictures of the existing building have been prepared and submitted by the applicant. Selections of those are included in Exhibit C of this report, but all submission material is included in the DASH program. The Esford House is considered a contributing heritage building by the Berryfield Conservation Plan. The proposed works are required to be undertaken in accordance with the village district plan. Other applicable bylaws, policies, and guidelines should also be considered and followed in order to ensure that the works complement and enhance the district. Section 4 of the district plan provides direction on various types of possible changes in the district in order to conserve its cultural heritage value. Section 423 provides direction on window conservation, and Section 425 speaks to exterior cladding. The current windows, according to the applicant, were added in the 1990s when the building underwent a significant alteration. Section 423E directs that all window replacements shall be completed in accordance with the city's policy on window renovations in heritage buildings. The window policy directs that where windows are not period appropriate, that their replacement is encouraged, and that the new window should replicate a period window as closely as possible. From an authenticity perspective, wooden windows in this case would be the most ideal, particularly on the original or oldest part of the building. Staff and members of this committee, via their comments, have suggested this to the owners. Wooden windows have been included as an approved option in our recommendation. However, from a budgetary perspective, the owners would prefer to focus their resources on the wood siding installation and use a less expensive vinyl window option. While the period window policy encourages the use of era-appropriate material or metal-clad wood windows, it does not, however, specifically prohibit alternative materials, provided they resemble period-appropriate windows as close as possible. If the new windows are designed to fit within the existing openings, are of an appropriate type, in this case sash, with exterior mountain buttons in a thin and simple profile, and include the vertical and rectangular dimensions common in Berryfield, then the materiality is a secondary concern. The owners are proposing to use wood trim around each of the windows to match the new wood siding. Next slide, please. Section 424D prohibits the installation of new window openings on public facades of heritage buildings. Now, while the entire building is considered heritage in the district inventory, the latter addition is not noted on the list of heritage attributes. The new window is to be located on the ground floor near the rear of the west side elevation on the later addition. It will be designed to match the size and pattern of windows throughout the building with the typical vertical and rectangular portions common in the district. The creation of the new opening at this location will have no impact on the overall heritage character of the district. Section 425 provides policies related to the exterior cladding on heritage buildings. Subsection A notes that the principal cladding on heritage buildings of Berryfield are typically wood or stone, and to a lesser extent brick or stucco. The owners are proposing to replace the current blue vinyl siding on the original front portion of the dwelling with a horizontal wood siding in a rabbited bevel profile from Mybeck in a light gray or green tone. The owners have agreed to source smooth finish in response to a comment from a committee member. Subsection B directs that new cladding materials such as synthetic siding are not permitted on public facades of heritage buildings. Section 7 of the plan defines public facade as the elevation or elevations that are visible from the public street or right of way. The term public facade was created for the village plan to give higher priority and consideration to those elevations that enhance the public experience of the cultural heritage value of the district when viewed from the public realm. It also acknowledges that in Berryfield, a low-density rural-like village, these primary elevations usually include more than just the front wall. This address is rated heritage in the plan with the specific contributing heritage attributes of the property noted in the inventory evaluation, which do not include the rear 20th century addition to the house. In other words, what makes this property a contributing asset to the district are specifically those features noted in the inventory and how they help to conserve the broader heritage value and attributes of the district itself. This is not to say that the appearance of the later addition is not important, but that a greater effort and attention should be given to the older portion of the dwelling in order to showcase and clearly tell the story of the Esford house. New synthetic siding on the older portion of the dwelling would not be appropriate or supportable. Section 9 of the federal standards and guidelines directs attention or alterations to be physically and visibly compatible with the historic place and identifiable on close inspection. It is common conservation practice to use a differing style of finish to distinguish one period of the building from another. It's important to be able to clearly discern the evolution and history of the heritage resource and to highlight those earlier portions of the dwelling that contribute to the overall character of the district. As a rear secondary facade and later addition, the use of a synthetic material in a distinctly different style, the board and batten, in combination with the use of the traditional wood horizontal siding on the front section, will clearly distinguish the older portion of the house from the more modern addition. The side elevations will clearly be visible. However, as the older portion of the dwelling sits so close to the road, the addition will take on a secondary subordinate role on the property, thus making it both distinguishable as a later addition and as a backdrop to showcase the heritage building. With the use of authentic wood siding, one's eye will be drawn to the older front portion of the dwelling at the expense of the rear addition. Next slide, please. The owner also is proposing to remove the small vestibule from the east side of the dwelling, added in the 1990s, and replace it with a large vestibule with an extended roof covered porch on the side. Section 4.3 of the district plan provides policies and guidelines related to additions on heritage buildings and is largely reflective of Standard 11 of the federal standards and guidelines, which is that additions are compatible with subordinate and distinguished from the historic place. Section 4.3.1 directs that new additions be limited in size and height and set back from the street-facing facade so as not to compete with heritage building. Section 4.3.2 suggests that additions be designed in a contemporary manner that references the design motif of the existing heritage resource, while being clearly distinguishable as a new intervention on the property. The proposed addition, while slightly larger than the existing, will be similar in scale, set back from the older portion of the dwelling and designed to match the roofing and cladding of the later rear addition of the dwelling. So this application was circulated internally and to the committee. The committee's comments are consolidated in Exhibit B to this report. Those 4 members that responded in writing noted concerns, which have been provided to the owners and spoken to in our analysis. Next slide, please. Can I get one more slide? Okay, so this is the recommendation. Again, I wanted to just quickly point out all 11 of these are detailed alterations. We wanted to make sure we're clear. Next slide, please. And the conditions, all 10 of them, I wanted to point out for the committee's benefit, number 4, which is the use of wood siding as an option for the later addition, and the use of number 5, which is the use of wood or metal clad windows as an option. And then number 6 was something that was in response to a committee member comment that 6x6 glazing pattern window is provided as an option as well. However, staff are supportive of the 2/2 that is proposed. So one more slide. Just to, oh, there wasn't on number side. Okay, so just to summarize, Mr. Chair, the 1850s heritage building known as the Esford House was likely a 1-story or perhaps 1.5-story with small dormers, wood framed and clad dwelling on a limestone foundation with a central brick chimney. In the latter part of the 20th century, the roof height was increased, the chimney and original windows removed, and the vinyl siding and a larger addition was added. One has to look closely at the current building to discern the original profile and humble beginnings beneath the substantial alterations. The current building, while it does contain a number of very field building traits, its pitched roof, its rectangular plan, its 1.5-story massing, is not considered a prominent building in the district, or even a great example of the traditional form and character of historic buildings in the village. The owners should be commended on their proposal to reintroduce authentic wood siding and window designs in the traditional form for this building. Further, the sourcing and installation of period appropriate doors and differing cladding on the rear will further draw attention to the older part of the dwelling. Staff are of the opinion that the proposal will uphold the heritage conservation objectives set out in the official plan, the district guidelines, the ministry's guiding principles, and the standards and guidance from the federal government. And we recommend conditional approval. Thanks.
Good, thank you very much, Ryan. Members, can you please confirm that the dash comments have been correctly recorded in the agenda? And seeing no complaints, thank you. Members of the public commenting on this? You know how to raise your hand, and I don't see any being raised there. Committee members, questions?
Mr. Chair, I believe Mr. Morrow is in attendance, who's the owner of this property.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Doug, do you want to comment?
Well, thank you very much. And I don't really have anything to add. I thank Ryan very much for his comprehensive presentation, which I think captures everything that we are asking the committee to consider.
Great. Thank you very much and welcome to the committee. Sorry, I no longer have the names of the applicants, so I have to guess who is connected with whom. My apologies for missing you there. Committee members, your turn for questions. And seeing none. Wow, what an interesting group you are today. Final comments? No, have we beaten you down or done something? Okay, I'm looking then for a mover and a seconder for the motion as printed with 12 points to it and 10 conditions, which Ryan read through to you. Looking for a mover. And I see Don Taylor looking for a seconder. I see Don Mitchell. Thank you very much. It's unamendable, unchangeable, unanythingable, so we can vote straight away on it. So those in favor, if you could raise your hands or shout.
Aye.
4, 5, 6, and I see 7 in favor. And for the format, those against. So that carries 7-1. So thank you, Ryan, for that. Thank you, Doug, for coming and for the work that you're doing on that building. That leads us to a notice of intention to designate 140 Stewart Street. And who's leading us on this one?
That's me, Mr. Chair.
That's
Hello,
you.
everyone.
Yeah, okay. How you doing? Child okay?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good.
Can everyone hear me clearly? I was getting a warning that my internet was unstable.
Oh, that's
I'm
right.
okay?
Yes, okay. Thank you for the warning.
Okay. So this presentation provides background information on the assessment of the cultural heritage value of 3 properties along Stewart Street, with a recommendation to issue a notice of intention to designate the property at 140 Stewart Street under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Next slide, please. The 3 properties are located on the south side of Stewart Street, just west of the termination of University Avenue and also west of Lower University Avenue. So on the screen, you can see 140 Stewart Street identified with the red arrow. And to the west, the 2 adjacent properties that we were discussing are 146 Stewart Street, as well as 154 to 160 Stewart Street. Next slide, please. So these properties are owned by Queen's University, and they are not currently listed, designated, or included in the Queen's University Heritage Easement Agreement. However, staff have prioritized the review of these properties with the understanding that Queen's University intends to pursue a demolition permit for 154 to 160 Stewart Street in the coming year. Next slide, please. These properties were reviewed and evaluated as part of a cultural heritage study by ERA Architects in 2015. This study was commissioned by the City of Kingston in response to a Queen's application for a demolition permit for 154 to 160 Stewart Street in 2014. The demolition permit was later withdrawn with an understanding that further assessment of the cultural heritage value of the 154 to 160 Stewart Street, as well as the adjacent properties, should be completed. So key findings of the 2015 Cultural Heritage Study included that 140 Stewart Street in front of you, otherwise known as the Sparks Royce House, should be conserved as the property satisfies multiple criteria of Ontario Regulation 906 and is in very good condition. Next slide, please. Perfect. So the building at 146 Stewart Street, known as the LaSalle Building, is one of two buildings designed for Queen's University by Holtzhausen, Thompson, Laframboise, Molitor architect and engineers in 1968. The building does not meet any of the criteria of Ontario Regulation 906, and consequently, this time the property does not merit cultural heritage consideration or protection. Next slide, please. Bit of a lag here, but we'll wait for the next slide to come up. There we go. So most recently home to the Queen's Department of Film and Media, 154 to 160 Stewart Street is most often referred to as the Film Studies Building. So the property contains a pair of formerly detached late 19th century Queen Anne residences constructed in 1897 and 1899 respectively. They are joined by a modern three-story addition which was constructed in 1998. So given that the Department of Film and Media moved to the Isabel Bader Center in 2014, and the university's campus master plan identifies this property as a redevelopment site for the construction of a new building, the site has been vacant since 2014. According to Julian Smith, the university's heritage consultant, and as well as current engineering reports from 2019 and 2021, the physical condition of the building is very poor. So the 2015 Cultural Heritage Study evaluated the building using Regulation 906 and did find that it satisfied some criteria of Regulation 906. So for example, it is representative of the Queen Anne style. However, its architectural integrity has been negatively impacted. Again, the evolution of Stewart Street from a residential to institutional landscape has certainly diminished its contextual value. So to advance a designation under the Ontario Heritage Act, at least one criterion of Regulation 906 must be met. However, the meeting of a criterion does not necessitate a designation. So in the case of the Film Studies Building, these buildings have design physical value as representative Queen Anne style residences. However, residential examples of the Queen Anne style exist within the surrounding area that exhibit higher physical and design integrity. Next slide, please. So as ERA's Cultural Heritage Study demonstrates, there are several Queen Anne style houses in the vicinity and across downtown Kingston, including a number that are protected under the Ontario Heritage Act. Moreover, several of these Queen Anne buildings are in Queen's ownership, including 96 Albert Street, 20 to 24 Barry Street, 172, 174, and 178 Barry Street, as well as 144 Albert Street, which many of you may be familiar with, as it was recently successfully incorporated into a new student residence. Next slide, please. So furthermore, Stewart Street has evolved considerably over the last 60 years from a late 19th century residential street to one of largely institutional character. The Film Studies Building's visual and historic links to the surrounding area have been weakened by 50 years of institutional development along the street, thereby eroding their contextual value. Ultimately, 140 Stewart Street to the east, which has a high level of physical and design integrity, is better suited for conservation as a physical reminder of Stewart Street's former residential era. Next slide, please. Designations represent public recognition of the cultural heritage value of buildings, sites, landscapes, and cultural features that help to define and conserve a sense of place, space, and the unique and valued aspects of our collective history. Importantly, all historic buildings merit careful consideration when faced with conservation, redevelopment, and/or demolition. Staff have carefully reviewed all relevant reports and assessed a variety of considerations when considering the cultural heritage value of the 3 Stewart Street properties. So staff's final recommendation is to move forward with the designation of 140 Stewart Street, to take no action on the property at 146 Stewart Street, and to take no action, and in doing so allow the demolition of the property at 154 to 160 Stewart Street. Next slide, please. So I'm going to just very briefly go over the designation process just to make sure everybody is sort of aware of the basic steps. We won't go through this flow chart because it is quite comprehensive. But in a nutshell, so the process basically includes the researching and evaluation of a property, which ultimately leads to a proposed designation, The next step is consultation with the Municipal Heritage Committee, and finally, a decision by council as to whether to proceed with issuing a notice of intention to designate. If council supports the designation, then a notice of intention to designate is served, and following that is a 30-day appeal period. This is where the process has been recently modified by Ontario Heritage Act changes on July 1st, 2021. So essentially now any objection of that notice is required to be brought back to council for consideration. Council then has 90 days to decide if it wishes to withdraw or maintain its notice of intention to designate in the form of either a notice of passing or a notice of withdrawal. The public is then afforded a second opportunity to appeal the designation to the Ontario Land Tribunal within 30 days of the publication of the notice of passing. So finally, the tribunal will review the appeal, hold a hearing, and render a binding decision on the designation. Next slide, please. So we're now going to look at a little more closely at 140 Stewart Street, which is the property proposed to be issued for a notice of intention to designate. So the property, which is also known as the Sparks Royce House, is one of the last residential buildings on Stewart Street and contains a 1.5-story stucco-clad brick house, which was constructed in 1923. The building has undergone few alterations and displays much of its original building fabric. The property satisfies 6 of the Regulation 906 criteria and accordingly meets the requirements for designation under the Act. The Sparks Royce House is proposed for future inclusion in the updated Queen's University Heritage Easement Agreement. However, given the significant cultural heritage value of this property, staff recommend interim protection under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. So if we move to the next slide, I'm just going to briefly go over some of the identified cultural heritage values of the property. So the building has physical and design value as a unique example of a classically influenced residence in Kingston dating to the early 1920s. And the house was finely constructed with high degree of craftsmanship and has undergone very few alterations. In terms of its historical and associative values, it does have connections to Dr. E.B. Sparks, who was a local dentist and had many other interesting parts of his career, but specifically he commissioned Page and Warrington of Toronto to design this house. Jean Isabel Royce, Queen's University's longest serving registrar, lived in this house after Queen's purchased the property in the 1960s. And lastly, Page and Warrington, architects of Toronto, designed the house for Dr. Sparks in 1921, and it is indeed their only known work in Kingston. Contextually, the house is a remaining example of Stewart Street's residential era. It was one of the last built and is very distinct in its style, materiality, and setting. Next slide, please. There are a great number of heritage attributes associated with this property, or otherwise we could call them physical components that express the cultural heritage values, which I just mentioned. This is due to its refined and thoughtful design and high level of physical integrity. Additionally, there have been very few alterations since its construction. So I won't go over all of the cultural heritage attributes. There are indeed 2 pages of them here. I will just draw you to a couple examples. So for example, the images on the right of the screen, you'll see the placement of the house set well back from Stewart Street, illustrating the original residential street wall. And as well, the picture below, you can see the wood barge board on the gable ends with corbelled brick courses at the base of the roof gable step. Very interesting indeed. Next slide, please. So on the next slide, when it comes up, you'll see the last of the heritage attributes. So I'll just draw your attention to the front entrance, which is composed of a 6-panel wood door, a decorative leaded glass transom framed within flanking wood columns and a rectangular pediment. And below you'll see the double French doors and the bifold wood shutters with S-shaped metal shutter hold back hooks. So this is just to say that there's many, many fine architectural details remaining on this building. And certainly it's got a high level of physical and design integrity. Next slide, please. So the next slide contains staff's recommendation to council, which is that council serve a notice of intention to designate the property at 140 Stewart Street, and that should no notice of objection be received, that council approve the draft designation bylaw for 140 Stewart Street. Thank you very much.
Good, thank you very much. Do I presume it's still used as a residence?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, in reference to 140 Stewart Street, is that the question? It's still used as a residence?
Yeah.
No, it's currently, as I understand it, maybe, and Tony this is on the line and he's welcome to jump in, but as I understand it, it's used for offices currently.
Okay. That's right, Tony, for offices?
Actually, it's presently, and it could change because we're requiring more space now, but presently it's actually used as a center for racialized student groups.
Oh, okay.
As a student club space, that isn't left to students to manage. This is managed by the Central University and access to the space. But yeah, it's a fantastic use for it.
Okay, thank you. Committee member questions or comments? Don Taylor?
Certainly, we can support the intention to designate. It's been a few years since the working group met, but I do have some recollection of this property being discussed and considered for designation. So I think the working group is certainly would be supportive of this. I have to say about the film studies buildings that I'm sure committee members really regret that these are moving towards designation, demolition, but I guess this is not a surprise, and it just shows the power of neglect and vandalism in a few years can really mean that significant buildings can be seriously damaged. I was also a bit concerned about the some of the discussion in the report on the condition, sort of complaining that they're really not much use because they don't meet modern accessibility requirements. Well, I think no heritage buildings easily meet modern accessibility requirements, and that should not be considered a reason for not appreciating them. And I'm also concerned that there are many buildings of a similar age and quality in the Queen zones on Berry Street, for example, similar period, style, and in some cases, in need of renovation. So I think the committee should be very watchful about the future of these residences around the campus. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. I'd also add that Queen's has done a remarkable job in making a lot of their older buildings accessible, and we've watched that over the years. Jane McFarlane?
I had a question for Alex. I just wondered if, but perhaps Dawn has answered it anyway, if anyone from Heritage Properties Working Group was able to get back to you with the short turnaround about this being brought to Heritage Committee. And I would also express regret that the Film Studies building is being considered for demolition, and that it has deteriorated to such a state that it's in right now. Thank you.
Okay. Don Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. I just wondered if Tony could expand upon the commemoration process, like what that entails beyond, I understand maybe a plaque. And then the second question for Tony would be, how does Queen's being supportive of the designation play out? Who makes that decision? In other words, what's the authority that has said that they're supportive of this? And is there a documentation of that or something?
Hi, Don. Happy to answer, and thank you. Nice to see you again. I can say that, senior leadership at the university is supportive of this. I certainly wouldn't be here without the full knowledge of senior leadership and their support for the designation. As mentioned in the report, Queen's has been provided with the designation, and we're in full agreement. The Sparks Royce House is a culturally significant property. Jean Royce lived at that house, the university's longest standing registrar. It's a lovely home. And to the earlier point on accessibility, previously that house wasn't accessible, but it was made accessible in a very sensitive way. And when you look at those front photographs, you can see how the original intent of the walkway was maintained and was the grade was brought up to make it accessible while maintaining that front porch. So, we have experience with this, and we have, done that successfully. So just to point back that, yes, this is with full support of the university. In terms of the commemoration, the university started a program about 5 years ago called Queens Remembers. And the idea was to mimic the Kingston Remembers programs around commemoration. So you will see plinths around Queen's University campus that mirror the ones that you will find around the city. And the whole goal of that was to really have an integrated commemoration process so that visitors to the city would see the commemorative plinths, on city property, on the university, and really know that we're trying to tell a story. So, some of the subjects is Fifth Field Company. And that was a great commemoration to, the past of Fifth Field Company, to Indigenous past and futures at Queen's University is another of the plinths we have. And really the subject matter is open, and we would certainly discuss that with staff and with the working group. We'd be more than happy to. We provide them in French and English. There's a broad plinth to discuss, and we could commemorate the buildings themselves. We can commemorate the former residential streetscape, and we're really open to that, right? We want to tell the story of Kingston, and we want to tell the appropriate story for the area. So we'd be very happy with that, and working with everyone to make that happen.
Good, thank you, Tony. Alex, you had a hand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I've just turned off my video for the time being in hopes that it will improve my clarity. I understand I was lagging. I just wanted to respond to Jane's question that unfortunately we haven't received any comments back since our email to the Heritage Properties Working Group. But I did just want to reassure that this property's been looked at quite extensively over the years. And so ERA Architects back in 2015 wrote a draft statement of cultural heritage value. And indeed, I've been out on site and added even more details to that draft statement to clarify the heritage attributes. So I think it's had quite a lot of good eyes on it and good hands. And certainly, if there are any, we're always curious though to hear, even if it's after the fact, I'm always interested to hear if people have any thoughts on wording or the way that we describe attributes, because it's very important that everyone's very clear on what they are. So it's a lot of the language used and making sure it's clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane.
Just want to say thanks for that, Alex. And I was wondering if the film studies building will be photographically documented prior to demolition, if that goes ahead and is approved.
Well, they've heard the question, and
so, through you, Mr. Chair. Well, through you, Mr. Chair, I would just say that obviously, the building doesn't currently have any sort of status in terms of, any sort of mechanism to require documentation. But certainly that's our recommendation. And I know Tony and the university are sort of aware of the desire to certainly have a good record of those buildings before they're lost. And I'm happy for Tony to speak to that as well.
I think certainly we can ensure that the buildings are photographed and then the photographs deposited in our archives. Certainly the exterior, there really is nothing of note left on the interior because of its institutional use through time. But certainly the exterior of the building, we would photograph and deposit at our archives, where I believe there already are photographs of the buildings and in our buildings collection, but certainly we would do that.
Good, thank you very much. Other questions? Otherwise, I can probably go straight down to asking for a remover of the recommendation that Heritage Kingston recommends to council serve notice of designation. Do you need that on the screen? Otherwise, Paul Bamfield moving, seconder, Don Taylor, further discussion. Don Mitchell.
I just very quickly, I think through you, Mr. Chair, I think Don Taylor brought up an interesting point about accessibility, and I just wanted to raise that, it's tough with best practices, but both cost and barrier free were used as justifications. The other justification that and I'm not flagging these as issues. I just want to meaningfully mention them. The other one was using other elements of the campus master plan as a justification for why other areas of the campus master plan might go ahead as written. And in having said that, I appreciated that when you look at the master plan, at least the copy I have, it did mention for demolition, and I think this is a great victory and a positive thing that 140 will be preserved.
Good, thank you. Other comments? Otherwise, you have a motion on the floor to recommend the council to serve notice of intention to designate. Those in favour of that notice going to council, please raise your hands.
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4. And I hear done. Those against, or Ted, sorry. And there are none against. So that is 7-0 again. Thank you very much. That brings us down to the Heritage Kingston Review Working Group document, which you have and which I believe needs to be approved. Is that right, Madam Clerk? We haven't had one of these for a while.
Yes, please, Mr. Chair, if we could just have a motion to receive them.
So you have the Heritage Kingston Review Working Group of early February there, which I hope you've read and thought about. Do I have a motion to receive that report? Doesn't mean to say you even agree with it. Don Mitchell and a seconder, looking for Don Taylor. Thank you. Any questions or concerns? Seeing none, if you can vote in favour of receiving it and against receiving it. So that is received and looked after. That brings us down to emergency approvals. Ryan, anything? No, Ryan. Anybody with emergency approvals?
None to report, Mr. Chair.
None to report. Thank you. No motions. Notices of motion. Seeing none. Other business. Note then we have correspondence from the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario and from the Ontario Heritage Trust, 2 of them, and also added today the email letter from Frontenac Heritage Foundation. We have a meeting on April the 20th, 9:30, and we need a motion for adjournment. Oh, everybody's up. I saw Jane and Don Mitchell first of all. Thank you very much. Thank you for that, what is it, 12:27 3-hour meeting. And thank you, Elizabeth and Julia, for looking after us so well. See you in a month, if not before. Take care.